Welcome back onto the baseline. As always, joining me on the baseline banter is Travis Wilson and Chris Smith. Fellas, it is playoffs are here now in every sport. We're through regionals and girls. Boys regionals start this week. Before we hop into that, how was your weekends? What'd we do? Trav, I got to see you a lot, but Chris, how was your weekend?
My weekend was good. Got to watch the Hartford girls get a couple wins and head to sectionals, which is always exciting. Third straight year in a row now. And then also got to coach my daughter over the weekend in her last tournament. And they went 2-1, so it was a very successful weekend. And on top of that, any free second that I had, I was entrenched in watching film for the playoffs.
Did you qualify for one of the 15,282 state championships this weekend?
Yeah, we qualified for a couple different ones throughout this season, and we did not go to any of them because it's fourth grade basketball.
You might need to get some film over to Trav so he can get that his what would that be, class of 30.
I want to say she's what, 30? Is it 34?
So class of 34 girls basketball state rankings updated from his account on Twitter, his second account.
Yeah, that's important. I hear you have a really nice list going.
Trav, I got to see you this weekend. Yesterday, ran a really fun, really filled basketball tournament in Richland Center. We had five grade levels, fourth through eighth grade at our tournament. We had 4 teams in each, so they got to play a little 3-game round robin. But I love seeing. We have such a nice facility that doesn't get used enough on the basketball side. That it's nice. This is the second year we've kind of ran this end of year tournament.
Yeah, it was a good time. Brought my boys over, and we took over a court and refed 11 games throughout the day, rotating between the three of us. It was good to get out there with them, get them hopefully going on something that they can continue to do for quite a while and give back to the game, and maybe more importantly for me, earn some money so they have their own money they can do things with. But a senior and a freshman out there reffing did a nice job. My freshman son reffed 8th grade, kids that are only a year younger than him, and thought he did a really good job. So it was fun to get out there. I'm too old to be doing 8 games in a day anymore, to be honest with you, but apparently that's what I did. And as I mentioned, I gave my game checks to the boys. I have all year. So Brock, my freshman son, reffed last week with me and this week and made $600 in the last 2 weekends. So good to get them into it and interested. I'm going to spoil them, I think. Like, they're going to expect to get that amount of money every time they go ref now, which is not going to be the case. But
why did I pay for supper last night if Brock's made that kind of money the last 2 weeks?
You chose to. I don't know.
No, one thing, and Trav, you're doing a good job with Brett and Brock, but it's something that I've always done too with our tournaments is getting kids in there to officiate. We had 1 active high schooler in there, and then I had 3 former kids that I've coached that are college age / early 20s that were back officiating. So just trying to keep them involved, so to speak. Also, PSA to all those tournament directors out there, you can charge not that much to get teams into your tournament. You can have your admissions be $5. You can make concessions reasonably priced, and you can still make the money that you want. So, youth sports need to be affordable.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, actually, where we were at this weekend, we were in Milton, and everything seemed to be pretty well priced. I guess it was like $5 for entrance, I think, for spectators, and then I think it was like, I don't know if it was like under 6 or under 8 that was free. So it worked out pretty good, I think.
Yeah, we actually had like McFarland and Wanakee were all over this way. Baraboo, so we had teams that were traveling hour plus, and talked into some of their coaches, and they have parents that ask, and they're like, it's pretty cheap for us to play in this. We're not getting charged an arm and a leg. I'm like, yeah, you don't need to.
Yeah, there are some places where like are charging like $12 to $15 a person. I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
This is
just
ridiculous.
That's on the low end in a lot of places. I mean, it's $20 a day or 25 a weekend or something like that in a lot of places, and that's not even AAU.
Yeah, like
AAU, you
school
get a
club
whole
ball,
different
like all
level.
of a
But
sudden becoming AAU 2.0, which is pretty frustrating.
yeah. I took note and leadership from my father, not just in the way I say Aquinas, but in how to handle youth sports. He always showed that it was more about the involvement and just people being there as opposed to the dollar sign that comes with the youth sports anymore. Um, just as a preview, tonight we have a packed episode. We're gonna review the girls' first week of regionals. So we have 300 plus games this past week. We're down to Trav. How many are left in each? 16 teams left in each division.
yep.
16. Yep, 16 teams left in each division. We got 2 days of sectionals this week. So we're going to review this past week, talk a little bit about some of the sectional placements, maybe some of the better matchups. But then we're going to do similar to what we did last week, but on the boys' end, we are going to have a full on sectional preview of the boys, or playoff preview, excuse me, for the boys' side of things. As always, the baseline banter. Our presenting sponsor is Bound. If you want to see all the information for boys and girls playoff basketball this next couple of weeks, head over to boundwisconsin.com. You will find stories, stats, schedules, streams, everything you need, scores, everything you need on boundwisconsin.com. Trav, we just started posting some all conference lists that have come in on the girls and boys side, so stay tuned for those as well. Let's hop into it. Girls side. For the most part, Trav, pretty chalk, right? A lot of ones and twos advancing. In that D1 side, you're getting your 4s and 5. I think we only had 1, 2, 3, 4. They were all within D3 and D4 in Division 1 that were above a 5 seed that advanced. Let's break it down division by division. Division 1, what stuck out the most, what maybe is the biggest storyline, and then talk about maybe, if we have any, some of the bigger performances.
Yeah, well, let's go back a little bit maybe and talk first round upsets from that perspective, and then we'll get into each division a little bit deeper. But I wanted to mention, and I highlighted this on Bound Wisconsin and the Rapid Reaction, just kind of a by the numbers look at where things played out from a seeding perspective and in an upset perspective, and also just from a scoring perspective. So in the first round of games, which that's not a full schedule because there's a lot of buys, obviously, in the upper divisions. Division 5 is the only one that really has full, for the most part, 16 team brackets. But there were 137 games in that opening night on Tuesday. The higher seeded home teams, as you can imagine, did pretty well. 115 and 23 in those games. From a seed standpoint, there were some double digit seeds that won. A couple 12 seeds were the highest seeded teams that claimed victory. Barron, a number 12 seed, beat number 5 Menominee Nation, and then number 12 Random Lake beat number 5 Horicon in overtime. Those were the highest seeded teams that advanced, and then there was a few 10 seeds as well. From a scoring perspective, we did see that the average margin of victory in that first round was a little bit higher than the norm. The average margin of victory, as we had talked about in detail earlier this year, just from a macro standpoint over the last year, was around, I think it was 24 points. The average margin of victory in that first round was 28.7 points per game. So we did see a few more blowouts. Obviously, we saw a real lopsided score, about as lopsided as we've seen all year on the girls' side, with Sheboygan Lutheran beating Stockbridge 106-2. West Salem won by 85 over Watoma. There were 39 out of the 137 games that were decided by at least 40, 21 of those by at least 50, 13 by at least 60, and 5 by at least 70. Not anything different than what we've seen over the last few years.
Get sidetracked a little bit. There was talk on, the internets that were like, earn your way in. If I saw a comment that if you don't get to 10 wins, you shouldn't be in the playoffs.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's no reason to exclude teams in any fashion. Football is the only one that does not have everybody qualify for the playoffs, and that is, as much of a physical thing and a time limit thing, because you can only play one game per week in football. In a sport like basketball, does it suck to go on the road and lose by 40 or 50 and maybe sometimes traveling a little ways? Probably. But those schools have the option to opt out. If they don't want to participate in the playoffs, they can. We see a few more on the girls' side, certainly. Either they cancel their season or there are teams that play and just opt out. There's a handful of those each year. Maybe you could argue there should be a few more, but if they want to go out and play, absolutely let them go play on that Tuesday night. And if it means they get beat by a sizable margin, so be it. That is an experience that you can't. I don't think you can take away from kids. Especially the seniors. Having a senior athlete myself, if all of a sudden they were like, "Well, we're just not going to go," and sorry, you're done. That would be a very difficult pill to swallow. So I think for the most part, the only people that really clamor for that are fans that have no investment in high school sports. It's not the coaches, it's not the players, it's not anybody like actually invested, or even parents of the players. It's just people that like to sit on the internet and complain about things. So I would argue vehemently against anything like that. I would not be opposed to schools opting out if they feel like that's the best situation for them. But I would never support that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, Chris.
Careful what you wish for too, right? Because a lot of those people that are talking about that, they're not the ones that are fans or from a place that is struggling like some other schools, right? And sometimes it's only like a 1 to 3 year thing, and then all of a sudden they have some talent and they're back to it. So obviously there's a lot to talk about on both sides, but again, it's really easy to sit behind a computer screen and bring up ideas and talk about certain things when in reality you don't really know all the details.
Chris, one of the arguments we saw, or that I saw particularly, was that some of those athletes on those teams don't even want to play that game. They're tired of the season. They're ready for it to be over. Absolutely, that's the case. But that's not every player on every one of those teams. And
yeah.
I'm not a very big advocate of taking away opportunities from kids.
And let's not forget, we've talked about this like with the Anago situation, right? Of letting players make those kinds of decisions, or letting players dictate things that happen in your program.
Yeah.
If players had their way, in a lot of places, there wouldn't be practices, or there wouldn't be as many practices or as long of practices. Like, the adults make the decisions, hopefully with, input from the players from a certain standpoint, but you don't, that's not the kind of decision you let players make in my opinion. So
I brought up I've been an assistant with, I think this is year 10 JB with center. 8 of those years, or 6 of those years, 6 or 8, we've had under 10 wins, and we've had playoff victories in 4 of those years or something like that, including getting to a regional final. So maybe we just didn't click until the end. Maybe we were battling injuries. Maybe, stuff happens and you get a mixture of luck and a little bit of momentum come playoff time. I don't know. Little divergent, Trav. Let's get back to this girls preview, or this girls review.
So let's go to Friday night, regional semifinals, second round. Everybody, or all brackets are moving forward at that point. 160 games played on Friday night. The margin of victory did get a little closer, as I mentioned. We also saw some of the number 1 seeds go down for the first time. But just looking at the numbers, Our average margin of victory was 24.6, down from 28.7. The higher seeded home teams went 137 and 23. So the higher seeded home teams actually had a higher winning percentage on Friday in the regional semifinal round, just slightly, than they did in the first round of games. Again, still a number of blowouts, but each round of the playoffs that does shrink a little bit. And then looking at regional finals on Friday, those higher seeded teams in the 80 games that were played on Friday had a winning percentage of 80%. The higher seeded home teams. And again, just a little bit lower than what we had seen the first couple nights of the week. In terms of lowest seeded teams still left, and we'll talk about this as we get going, really the big Cinderella right now is Westosha Central as a number 13 seed, a team that finished tied for fifth in the Southern Lakes Conference, went 8-16 overall during the regular season. And here they are advancing into sectional play. They beat a couple teams coming out of the Classic 8 conference that, Classic 8 versus Southern Lakes usually you would have thought would lean towards a Classic 8, but they beat 4-seeded Muskego on Friday, and then in the regional final on Saturday, beat Oak Creek 59-51. So if you're talking Cinderellas, that's the biggest Cinderella remaining. There's a couple other in Division I that are seated a little bit lower. Otherwise, you're right, Colton. You said it earlier. It was a lot of chalk in girls basketball, which is not surprising, given, as we've talked about a number of times, the kind of the widening gap between the haves and the have-nots and the good teams and even the average teams. So overall, there were 36 number one seeds that started out the playoffs, 4 in Division I and then 8 in each of the other divisions. And 33 of those 36 are still alive heading into sectional play. Which
on the girls' side, that D1, the sectional 4, that was kind of where all the upsets were. Westosha in the top half, and in the bottom half, 6 seed Kenosha Bradford and 7 seed Franklin both advanced. Picked both of them. I did. They were playing mostly their conference teams. That was almost a mini Southeast Conference tournament. But yeah, Kenosha Bradford and Franklin, 6 and 7 seeds, advancing in that half.
How about that Tremper beating Indian Trail?
Yeah,
that's the 15 over at 2. That's it's pretty incredible. 54-52. That's something you don't see very often, ever.
No, and
D1,
as we did the preview on that one, I mean, it was really Tosa East and everybody else, right? Yeah. I mean, Franklin is a 7 seed. I think I did pick them to get to the sectional final, maybe even coming out of that group. You had a couple MPS schools that were seeded fairly highly. You had the Southeast Conference teams that aren't quite as strong as some of those other teams in the Greater Metro or the Woodland or the Classic 8.
Right.
And so it set itself up to have a little bit of chaos in that sectional 4, with Tosa East really being that, kind of dominant program that we expect and have seen so far. So
looking at that Tremper Indian Trail game, if you go back and look at their first 2 games, Indian Trail won the first one by 24, and they won the second one by 31. Game 3, Tremper goes and wins it by 2.
That's incredible, though. I just I might have to go try to watch some of that and see what happened.
Trav, anything else to touch on in D1? We did have one other higher seed that won. That was Madison Memorial over Wanakee, 7 seed over 2. You got a Big 8 team knocking off a Badger team.
Yeah, and that's a good win for Madison Memorial, obviously, and that's a good win to represent Madison City schools. That's actually going to feed into our trivia question that we'll talk about later today. But it's been a while since the Madison City teams on the girls' side have had that level of success. We talked about it with the conference title race. It'd been a long time. It'd been over 20 years since a Madison public school had won an outright conference championship. This year, they certainly made a much better showing. La Follette and Memorial shared that conference title, and Memorial really proved it in the postseason. I mean, that was a nice win over Monona Grove, their first win, and then an excellent win over Wanakee in that second game. So now they get Brookfield East, who's the 3 seed in that group, and we'll see if they can keep it going. But that's one of the more surprising outcomes, I think, in Division One.
Actually, the only Big 8 school that advanced to sectional play was that Memorial team. Let's hop over into D2. When you look at it from a just straight seeds wise, there was 1-4 that made it, and that was, Chris had made a note, that was where Vincent was the one, but otherwise it's all 1s, 2s, and 3s in Division 2.
Yeah, and a couple of the 2s that had gone down, or at least one of the 2s. I mean, one of the 2s was Milwaukee Bayview, who Greenfield beat substantially by 31 in a regional final. So it is a lot of chalk. We did get one of the better games, certainly in the regional finals in Division 2 with that Pius Wisconsin Lutheran game. Wisconsin Lutheran was a team that we talked about, just like Pius, went out and played anybody and everybody, and really challenged themselves. Both those teams did. And we were anticipating a very good game in that one. That was the third time they played, and Pius ended up getting a 1-point win in that one.
For the third time.
Yeah, in a very good regional final game. One of the better games in the entire state, regardless of division. But otherwise, it is a lot of chalk in Division 2. Nothing that stands out as too surprising. As we look forward, maybe we should go back and revisit Division 1 as well, just kind of looking forward at the sectional semifinal matchups that we have coming up. We've got some barn burners. When you get a lot of chalk and we start getting to this level, 16 teams remaining in each division, you're talking about now really some outstanding matchups. And in Division 1, Notre Dame and Kimberly stands out as an outstanding sectional semifinal game that'll be coming up on Thursday. Kimberly, of course, won state last year. Notre Dame won 3 state titles in a row just a few years ago. Still a very good program under Coach Sarah Rohde. Appleton East and Hartford should be a dandy. I mean, every one of those games in Division 1 is maybe outside of like Tosa East and Westosha Central. Is looking like it should be pretty competitive, and excited to see what that will look like. And then in Division 2, again, a lot of chalk, but does set up some interesting matchups as we're moving forward in the Division 1 top half, Sectional 1 top half. We've got a couple of Miss Basketball semifinalists taking on each other in Rice Lake with Adeline Shepley and Alana Simpson of La Crosse Central. An interesting one there. And then Edgewood and Milton, I think, is interesting. Different divisions of the Badger Conference. Edgewood has looked very good, but Milton has as well. And then, staying with Pius, who we were talking about before, they've got a Whitefish Bay team that has been one of those teams that's gone out and played everybody as well. So setting up for some really good games in Division 2, even though, again, it's mostly chalk there.
That has to be one of, if not the first time that a team has played another team 3 times and won by 1 point all 3 times. That is a wild statistic. You get to play each other 3 times and the outcome is pert near the same every single time.
Yeah, it's about as even as it gets.
Yeah. Hopping into D3, just looking at, again, the teams that advanced. We're looking at all 1s, 2s, and 3s minus. We did get an upset in that regional semifinal of 8 seed Freedom traveled to Northeastern foe 1 seed Denmark, got a win there, but then Brilliant advanced out of the 4 seed from that regional.
Yeah, and not a surprise that Freedom beat Denmark in that regional semifinal. They had beaten them less than 10 days previously. They played them twice, had split in the regular season. And I think I even mentioned it in my preview, and maybe we mentioned it last week, that as a Denmark team that had really done something special for the first time in quite a while, winning that conference championship, probably weren't too excited to see Freedom as the 8 seed that they would get right away in their first playoff game, because they had already lost to them just a few days earlier. So that did bear out. Brilliant ended up getting the win. They won in overtime. Both those regional semifinal games went into overtime. and then Brilliant got the win over Freedom in that regional final. So they'll take on Winneconne. Otherwise, again, a lot of chalk that we're seeing in Division 2, or excuse me, Division 3. I'm really looking forward to that Oostburg-Laconia matchup. I would expect Oostburg to come out of that one, but it is certainly an interesting matchup with two teams that are not, unfamiliar to success and trips to state, and have a similar kind of dynamic with a father coaching daughters. Laconia head coach Chris Morgan has coached a number of his daughters that have gone through there in the last few years, just one left in Finley Morgan. And then, of course, the Ketterhagen clan at Oostburg with Coach Isaiah Ketterhagen, the two seniors, and then the sophomore Kinsley Ketterhagen. Similar dynamics there. So I think that's one of the better games on the D3 schedule this week, as well as the game that I'm really looking forward to. I'm going to be able to go to that one. It's right in my backyard. Aquinas and Wisconsin Dells, going to be held at Reedsburg High School, just a short drive across town for me. So really excited to get to that one. One that we had been anticipating as we looked at these brackets, two of the top 5 teams in the state by every estimation in the same bracket, knowing that they're headed towards a sectional semifinal showdown. Aquinas got the 1 seed, even with a couple of losses, but they had played obviously a very difficult schedule. The Dells we talked about, finished the year undefeated. Didn't really have a lot of tests early on. They beat a couple solid teams late in the year that kind of helped cement them as a real contender in Division 3. But Aquinas will be certainly a different level of test for the Lady Chiefs there. But I think if you're talking, just strength of teams and overall resumes and the ability to score for both of them, with Samantha Davis at Aquinas and then Ashaya Hopkins and Natalie Backus at Wisconsin Dells, I mean, that's about as good as you're going to find for a sectional semifinal, and really excited to be able to get out to that one on Thursday. Again, held at Reedsburg High School. Get a rematch from the regular season in the sectional 1 top half with St. Croix Central and Baldwin Woodville. Those two teams, of course, played in the Middle Border Conference. Interestingly enough there, St. Croix Central got the 1 seed. Baldwin Woodville won that conference and actually beat St. Croix Central twice by single digits. But because of how resumes and tiebreakers worked, Prescott was I think they were the 2 seed in that group.
Yep.
The head-to-head did not apply because they had all beaten each other in some capacity. So it doesn't matter now. It's a neutral site who got the 1, who got the 2, or in Baldwin's case, the 3. But that will be one of those third time around matchups with Baldwin Woodville getting the victory the first time in both of those. So definitely a lot of interest and storylines in that one.
Yeah, looking at D4 again, I mean, feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's pretty much chalk. It's all the highest seed to advance was 2 3 seeds advanced in D4. Otherwise, it's all 1s and 2s. So maybe looking at the first round of those games, or the second round regional semis, what were some upsets? I know we had an Oconto 7 seed get a win over a 2 seed. Crivets, which I think we might have talked about as being a possibility, but anything else that stuck out as far as a lower seed getting a win over a higher seed, and if not, let's look and preview some of those sectional semis coming up on Thursday.
Poinet beating Bangor, maybe a little bit of a surprise. That was a 6-3. That was the first playoff game for Bangor, as they had a bye in the first game, and then you mentioned the Crivets going down. That was the other noteworthy one by a seed, but perhaps not surprising given the teams involved and Oconto having beaten Crivets in a non-conference game earlier in the season. Just the way strength of their schedule and conference was not surprising to see Oconto get that win. But then Oconto got pasted pretty well by Kewanee the next game. So a lot of chalk, some interesting matchups. You get Regis and Neelsville in a sectional semifinal. They were champions of the respective divisions of the Clover Belt Conference two of the better programs, for quite a while, in Division 4 or 3 or wherever they were, wherever they have been. So that one's definitely interesting. I think, just yeah, that's one that I think you'd peg as a really strong one. Colfax and Cameron is interesting as well. Pretty similar resumes for those two teams, kind of based out of Northwest Wisconsin, champions of their respective conferences. Very similar records. I think they were both 20-4 during the regular season. So should be a good one there. And also Dominican and St. Joe's, I think, is an interesting one too. They obviously played a couple times during the regular season, but
that was the one I was going to talk about. Dominican's got 2 single-digit wins. They Metro Classic foes. They're familiar with each other, so it's that dreaded Game 3 where you've beat the team twice beforehand. Can you do it a third?
Yeah, and not just beat them twice, but beat them in very close games.
Yes.
So, as we've seen, other than that Wisco Pius situation, I mean, to have competitive games and come out on top all 3 is really difficult.
Yeah. Heading into D4, this is, I think, probably our biggest story comes of the weekend, of the week in regionals comes out of this. We'll hop into it when we get to it, but again, 1s, 2s, and 3s minus Madison Country Day 4 seed coming out of that sectional 4 lower half. That's where Chesterton Academy was the 1. Madison Country Day was the 4. They got a win over a Faith Christian school, a Lake Country Classical Academy, and a Chesterton Academy. But now they get a Fall River, another Trailways school, in that sectional semi.
Yeah, Chesterton's one of those new programs. You never quite know, where they're at from a strength standpoint, and they're in the Lake City, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which a new conference, newer conference with a lot of newer teams, hasn't been established. Don't play the greatest non-conference schedule sometimes. So not a surprise that Madison Country Day came out of there. In the top half of that bracket was noteworthy, the Lord's Academy win over Valley Christian. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. They played twice during the regular season, and Valley Christian beat Lord's Academy for the first time since 2008. Both those teams based in Oshkosh. That was a very close game, 48-41. Looking at kind of that next level of games, one of the ones that really stands out, or a few things that really stand out, I think, Argyle Pecatonica and Barneveld, a couple of teams out of the Six Rivers Conference. Barneveld, no slouch under Jim Myers. It was interesting to see their score progression. I did not watch their regional final game against Shullsburg, but it was 31-18. So it would be interesting to see where the pacing was in that one, right? Because Barneveld had scored 67 against Blackhawk and then 73 against River Ridge, the first 2 games of the playoffs. So they're not a team that generally slows it down a lot, but that one was obviously lower scoring game. They had a lower scoring game on the other side as well, as third-seeded Owen Whippy won 31-27 over second-seeded New Auburn. But I mean, that Argyle Peck game against Barneveld, I think, is one of the more interesting and compelling matchups in Division 5. You've got Isabel Durst from Barneveld who can fill it up. Obviously, Brooke Wellnitz and Kylie Butler from Argyle Pecatonica looking to get back to the state tournament after making it a couple years ago. Conference opponents have played twice, all that good stuff, right? So interesting to see that one. And then, I mean, let's talk about it. The game
before we hop into that, I do want to talk a little bit about, the DeSoto Pirates. We talked about them being one of the biggest jumpers from that mid-season final. Obviously, we found out that quite a few of their games weren't on the WIAA site in that first mid-season, but they're a 3 seed, and they beat the 2 seed Blair Taylor Wildcats by nearly 28 points. Is that a team? They've got they were the Ridge and Valley undefeated champs. We've seen good teams like Kickapoo, Wazeeka, Seneca back in the day, or not Seneca, Weston back in the day got to a state championship or a state tournament.
Seneca made it to the state tournament a few times. They were a solid program for a long time.
So we're looking at a DeSoto team that
Coach Redmond was there. Oh. Kim Redmond was there for a long time as their head coach. Garrett Redmond's mother.
They'd have to get by
voice coach.
They'd have to get by 1 seed Independence Gilmanton, and then one of those Six Rivers, but I just want to give a shout out to DeSoto Pirates on that little run. I mean, that 84-56 win over Blair Taylor in the regional final, that's it's a little eye opener.
Yeah, that's not just a win. Like that's a statement.
Yeah. 84 games in a girls game that and D5 girls game, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, I mean, DeSoto's record is better than Blair Taylor's. Actually, DeSoto's 21-6 now. Blair Taylor's 19-7. In the Bound Power Index, they're very, very close. I mean, essentially next to each other, right around that 150 mark overall. Now, Blair Taylor's strength of schedule is quite a bit better. Playing in the Dairyland Conference, they were challenged a little bit more than DeSoto was coming out of the Ridge and Valley Conference, but that should be very competitive. Very, I think, evenly matched teams they were. And then next up for DeSoto is Independence Gilmanton, who also comes out of the Dairyland Conference and is pretty similar record wise, pretty similar profile wise, pretty similar ranking and strength of schedule and all that good stuff. So absolutely, DeSoto's got a chance to keep it going as a 3 seed and see what they can do in that one against Indy Gilmanton and potentially then looking at somebody from the Six Rivers on the bottom part of that bracket.
You started on this before I cut you off, but I mean, Chris, you even brought it up before we started filming. These story, I think the number one story likely from this early regional action in girls basketball. We talked about how these regional finals in that sectional 3 of D5 were going to be really good. You had a Pacelli Columbus Catholic and you had an Assumption Almond Bancroft. That's a brutal half sectional, right? But then we get to see that Pacelli Columbus Catholic ending.
Well, let's set the stage and go through what happened there for those that maybe haven't seen it. Number one, please check out the video so you know what we're talking about. It's linked in the regional final rapid reaction. I think I had reposted it on Twitter as well. But a competitive game, an outstanding high school
On
girls
Zaleski
basketball
Sports.
regional final. What's that?
On Zaleski Sports.
Yeah, on Zaleski Sports. So we got an excellent stream with broadcasters and everything out of it. Late in that one, Columbus Catholic knocks down a free throw. I believe it was Ellie Gardner, their standout freshman, that made a free throw with about 6 seconds left to go up 73-72 on Pacelli. And no timeout available for Pacelli. They get the inbound in, go down the court. Jaden Zdroik, their outstanding player, makes a drive to the basket, a little bit out of control. There was, a question of whether there was contact on that play. No foul called. I'm supportive of a no call in that situation, to be quite honest with you. It was a discussion item in an officiating group on Facebook that I'm in, just that part of it, whether it was a foul or not. Some people actually felt it could have been a foul. Some people felt it was a good no call. I come down on the side of no call as a player kind of driving into traffic and out of control, but throws up a shot that doesn't hit anything and goes out of bounds, lands out of bounds. The officials blow their whistles. Clock stops with 0.1 seconds remaining. No timeout on the floor, anything like that. And unfortunately, a Columbus Catholic player from the far side runs off the bench and onto the court to celebrate, believing that the game had ended. However, it was not ended. There was still time on the clock. The horn had not sounded. The clock had not gone to 0. The player ran out past half court. Officials blow their whistle to kind of get a better, grasp on what was happening. Seeing a player run out of the court like that, they huddled for 15 or 20 seconds discussing the situation. Came over to the scoring table and issued a technical foul on Columbus Catholic for a player leaving the bench area. And Ella Van Order from Pacelli stepped up, knocked down 2 free throws. It's Pacelli ball with 0.1 second left, up by 1. All they have to do is get the ball touched. Game is over. And that's what happened. So a devastating way to lose, an unfortunate way to lose. Certainly interested in what everybody's thoughts are on that scenario, but just wanted to lay it out for everybody that had not seen what had happened.
As just a proponent of high school sports and the kids and the athletes, because again, this is what it's all about. Man, you never want to see a game come down to that. You just never want to see that position.
No, you don't. And like I said before we came on air, I mean, like, I could see both sides of it, right? About calling the technical, not calling the technical. But at the end of the day, like, the officials need to make a decision, and they made a decision and they stuck with it. And it seemed like they took plenty of time to make sure that they were all on the same page, and they decided to make the call that they needed to make. You know, playing devil's advocate here a little bit, because Travis brought it up with the no call on a foul. Do you think maybe there was some conversation in that little huddle about, like, oh, well, maybe we should have called a foul and maybe we just called the technical and they get their free throws anyways? And
As
I
an
can't
official,
imagine.
and
that
again,
being-
I'm just saying,
Not-
I'm just bringing it up. Again, I'm just bringing it up.
conspiracy theorist Chris.
Here comes anti-official Chris. He's coming into the chat.
What are you talking about? Anti-official. I don't know
I'm
what you're talking
joking.
about.
I'm joking.
Well, but no, I mean, in all seriousness, like, to have, I felt like the three officials really came together and they talked about things, and you could tell that they were really going through it. But, like, I mean, a kid didn't just step on the floor.
Correct.
I mean, she was out on the middle of the floor, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but
Yeah, and
that didn't necessarily lose the game, because they still had to make, the other team had to make 2 free throws, and they did. So tip your cap to that.
yeah, and so I want to address, because there were some questions on Twitter about whether it was even the correct ruling, or if it, you know, some people said, well, it only applies to whatever. So the rule in question is Rule 10, Section 3 of the NFHS basketball rulebook, which states a substitute technical. A substitute shall not enter the court, and because they're a bench player at that point, they're considered a substitute, shall not enter the court without reporting to the scorer, or Article 2, without being beckoned by an official except between quarters and during timeouts. Penalty, 2 free throws plus the ball for a division line throw-in, penalized if discovered before the ball becomes live. So even though it was a dead ball, right, the whistle had blown to stop play as a dead ball situation, it still applies, and they're considered, again, in a substitute because they're on the bench coming into the area of play without reporting, without being beckoned. So it is a rule. It is the correct application of the rule. The question is there discretion that could or should have been used to not apply a technical foul? I think if it was not applied as a technical foul, I think many people would have been fine with it being applied that way, to be honest with you. I'm not advocating that you shouldn't call a technical there, but I think a lot of people would have said, and a lot of people have said on social, let's use a little discretion. You were probably going to huddle to go over time anyway, even though there was not an official timeout called by any team. Don't penalize, don't end a game in that manner. All those kinds of arguments come into play about whether.
Well, the thing about it, though, is that the thing about the rule, when you read it, right? I mean, you just did it. It's very black and white. Like, it is very specific, where you can't come onto the floor without reporting and an official allowing you basically to come in, right? So having discretion really gets thrown out the window there, because of the rule is the rule, right? And why are there rules if you're not going to abide by them? So, like, having discretion, I mean, I don't know. That's where I think they did the right thing. I think you have to follow the rules, especially when you're playing on the postseason platform, right? Like, it is win or go home, and you have to play by the rules.
From an official standpoint, and from honestly almost a overall standpoint, it's a lose-lose. If however that gets administered,
right?
That situation is just a lose-lose, and it's a situation you never want to see. A game, let alone a game to determine whether you're going home and your season's over or whether you're moving on ever again.
And I think everybody can agree upon that.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's why there's so much conversation about it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Trev.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's like any call that an official has to make that ends up deciding, impacting a game in a big situation. We've seen it. I mean, we see it every day in basketball. We see it every year in the big stage at the state tournament. I think back to the Whitnall game just a few years ago where there was a play that there was a controversial foul called late in the game that some people felt should not have been. As an official, you lose no matter what. And that's, I guess, kind of how it works, unfortunately. Like, if you make a call or you don't make a call, somebody's always mad at you one way or another.
And whether you're an official, you're a coach, or a player, right? Like, everyone's going to pass judgment on decisions that are made on the floor because everybody else that's sitting watching can make the better judgment call, right? It's always like, well, I'm sitting here on my couch watching this game, and I can clearly see that this is what should have been called. And it's like, well, you're not in the middle of it.
My biggest hope, and maybe a story that comes out of this, is the Don's coaching staff, her teammates, just rallying around the one athlete that did, one or two athletes that did run onto the court, and rallying around them, picking them up, because I can only imagine what those players are feeling. So
I know one of them. That's where my sympathy goes.
Yeah.
I don't know, because the camera angle doesn't pan over to show all of the action on that side of the court. You can certainly see one player that was not in the game that comes all the way across half court into the frame.
Yeah.
That player is a senior who all she wanted to do was celebrate with her teammates and celebrate what she thought was a regional final victory in a close game in dramatic fashion, and unfortunately made a mistake that severely impacted her team. But you're right, Cole. Hopefully that is something that can be handled correctly, appropriately by everybody, and it doesn't change things, right? It doesn't change the mistake. Just like an athlete that misses a shot, drops a touchdown, strikes out with the game on the line, whatever it is, you never change that. You can never forget it. We all of us remember times that we screwed up.
Yeah.
And sometimes those stand out more than anything. But you just hope that, you can move past it.
Yeah. Before we pivot right into the boys preview, remember with these girls sectional semis that are coming up, they're all neutral site games. All those, Trav, I think we've got all of them listed now, correct?
I believe we're still missing, at least when we started recording this, we were still missing the location for the Rice Lake Lacrosse Central game in Division 2. As of right now, it still shows TBD. Maybe they've been told and they just haven't updated it, but that's the only one we're missing right now. But they are all neutral site locations. A reminder to everybody out there, they are not equidistant locations. So let's not get caught up in the semantics of it's closer for this team than that team. I usually do it during football for the level 4 state semifinal neutral locations. I usually have a post about the first rule of making it to level 4, or in this case, the first rule of making it to sectionals is do not complain about where you play in sectionals.
Maybe you got an acronym for it similar to CRAPS.
I should look into that. But it's a puzzle the WI has to put together of facilities that are somewhat applicable geographically for both teams, that are appropriate from a from a capacity standpoint, are appropriate from a facility standpoint, from a media availability standpoint, from those schools wanting to do it. That's why they leave these as TBD now. Previously, as people may remember, all these sectional games had predetermined locations. And then, they would get there and the schools would be like, well, maybe we don't want to, or, our boys are playing and we don't want to have to do it. Or the teams that made it were teams that were, hosting that game. So I think to their credit, they just said, all right, we're going to leave everything TBD. and we'll figure it out. We have some ideas, but we'll figure it out once it's set. It's a puzzle to put together all those different components and find a place that is appropriate, especially in some areas of the state, right? In southeast Wisconsin, down in Chris's area, there's obviously a lot more facilities, which means a lot more options. You get in other areas of the state, like where are Rice Lake and La Crosse Central going to play? I mean, somewhere in the Eau Claire area would seem like the most likely option. You can't really get closer to La Crosse because there's not any larger facilities. So really, you're looking at
Is Black River Falls their field
Menominee.
house? I don't know if Black River Falls is field house. That they have a newer field house that I don't know. I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know size on that either. But again, it's a puzzle to put it all together. But again, first rule of making it to sectionals: do not complain about where you play in sectionals, because you can't magically put a dot on the map halfway between each school and say we'll play here. They're not going to build a stadium fast enough in that cornfield.
Yeah. We got a big boys preview to get to before we get to that. Just like we do every week, let's just go speed through these milestones, speed through these things that happen. Trav, starting the girls' side, what milestones were hit in playoff time this past week?
2,000-point scorer, a big one. I think it's number 5 or 6 or 6 or 7 this year in girls basketball. But Rory Salveson from Wittenberg-Burnhamwood hit 2,000 career points in the regional games. Looking at 1,000 career points, Ellie Buss from Neenah, Kayla Baumgartner from Medford, Ava Van Vonderen from Kimberly, a junior committed to Wisconsin, and Allison Henschel from Wild Rose. We had a few all-time leading scorers come into play as well. Taylor Kingbile from Medford became their all-time leading scorer, and Ruby Ringo from Grantsburg became their all-time leading scorer. I want to highlight a couple individual performances as well from the girls' side, and that is Ella Mae Cooper from Regis had 45 points in a regional final win over Fall Creek. That was a competitive game. It wasn't a blowout. Two teams that are very familiar with each other, and a huge performance by her to score 45 in that regional final. And how about Molly
from the free throw line?
Yeah. How about Molly Schluey from Sheboygan Falls in a opening regional game on Tuesday? Had 19 points, 12 assists, and 11 steals for a triple-double. She was a ways away from a quadruple-double, though. Only had 1 rebound, which is interesting when you have that many points, assists, and rebounds to get steals and to get 1 rebound. But impressive nonetheless in a triple-double, 78-43 win over Campbellsport. Again, they ended up losing later on, but a big triple-double performance for her.
Chris, I know you'd like to shout out Rita Keeper. She had a pretty big game against DSHA, 37 in that one.
Rita was on fire in that game. Yeah, she I think she was 6 of 12 from 3, and she I think scored the first 17 of the first 21 points in that game, and was outscoring DSHA, their entire team, for, I'm trying to think if it was the entire first half. When she gets on streaks like that, she's pretty fun to watch, and she's just completely unstoppable because her ability to just pull up and transition from anywhere is a nice thing to have.
Yeah,
a little bit of a cheat code.
I'll throw another one in there. Colton Aaliyah Schwem from Viroqua in a game that our brother-in-law and niece were at. Viroqua got a win over West Salem. Real cool experience for Delilah to watch Aaliyah put up 37 points and 14 rebounds in that win over West Salem.
Yeah, just a sophomore. We might have lost Chris, so I'll run through these. We'll run through the Chris, if you could. 1,000-point scores this past week in boys basketball. Go.
Yeah, 10 of them. Luke Paddock from Elkhorn, Brock Hodges from Beloit Memorial, and we have Caleb Earlbeck from Osceola, Easton Lurvey from Three Lakes, who's a sophomore. Good for him. That's scoring a lot of points in 2 years. Quinn Pyre from Williams Bay, Mikey White, Kenosha Bradford, Hayden Massman from Bangor, Braden Rinke from Mosinee, Nick Stelrecht from New Richmond, and AJ Dotson from Turner.
Couple other things of note in boys basketball. Austin Lyon of Westfield is a Dane Mum from Clayton, and Griffin Schultz of Union Grove all became their school's all-time leading scorers. J.J. Heikkinen out of Phillips put up a school record 58 in a game this past week. And then Brock Walzer out of Badger is the school record holder for points in a season. He says he's up to 608 on the year.
It's impressive.
That's zip code, by the way.
608. We're going to switch roles a little bit. Trav, you are going to kind of guide us through this boys side of things. Well, me and Chris bounce and have a conversation off it, but yeah, I'm gonna turn it over to you. You're gonna kind of point us in the direction that we need to go, and let's dive into this division by division.
Yeah, you want to start big divisions and go from there?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Well, let's start in Division One. Let's go sectional by sectional, and Division One, Sectional One. Pretty deep group, pretty competitive group, a group that I think, as we look at it, you could see 7, 8, 9 teams make a little bit of a run. You could see some upsets along the way. A lot of FVA teams that are going to get a lot of the attention, but a couple from the Wisconsin Valley Conference as well. So Division One, Sectional One, what do we see? What do we like? What do we think?
I think if you're looking at it from a favorite standpoint, you're probably looking at, even though they're the 2 and the 4 seed, Appleton, North, and Kaukauna are challenged every night in that FVA. They split their season series. I think they both took a loss either this last week or within the last 2 weeks. But if I'm looking at it strictly from a favorites, I'd probably pick one of those 2. Chris,
I think Appleton North is a really talented team. I know that in one of their last games of the season, they had a little bit of an injury, an ankle injury. I think one of their starters went out with, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And then you got an Appleton North team, right? That can, if they get through into the regional final, they have potentially, a third matchup with Kimberly, and Kimberly's somebody who's been playing pretty well lately too, and things, at this time of year, probably with a first-year coach and Cam Cerrone, really getting his guys comfortable and playing in the way that they'd hope to, right, all year. So usually that kind of stuff takes some time. But the number 4 seed Kaukauna is, yeah, go ahead.
And we saw that Kimberly team make a run last year with the interim, right? They were I think they were a lower seed. I don't remember exactly what seed they were off the top of my head, but I believe they made a run to sectionals last year out of this.
Yeah, they did. But I mean, you look at somebody who is not like a top seed, right? Is somebody like Kaukauna. Kaukauna we could very well see those guys in Madison, right? I mean, they're that talented, and they have plenty of talent to go around there, with their size, their athleticism, their shooting. So that if you want to pick somebody that isn't a top 3 seed, I mean, Kaukana's a pretty easy one to pick there.
Going down the list in that section a little bit, any sleepers, again, with it being so deep? Also curious thoughts on the Wisconsin Valley teams and their opportunity to make a run. DC Everest, Marshfield, and Stevens Point. The FVA teams have kind of been the ones to come out of that group, except for last year when Marshfield got through and got all the way to a state championship game in 2021, and kind of that revised situation. River Falls did come out of that sectional, but can those Wisconsin Valley teams hold up against the FVA?
All 3 of them split that championship this year. DC Everest, I think, lost to Stevens Point on that wild last Thursday night of the regular season to end in a 3-way tie. We've already seen Marshfield go and beat Kaukauna on a neutral site. Yeah. They have a difference maker in Chris Pohl. He's a 6'7" forward, 6'8" forward that's going to Wyoming.
Who's also shooting 45% from 3.
Just insane.
Yeah.
Right? Difference maker. DC Everest, they've put together, they're the 1 seed, but they're kind of looked over a little bit. But they have Cade Felch, Xavier Edwards. They have a balanced squad. And then you look at Spash, and Spash has wins over both of them. So, can they? Yes. Would I pick them over a Kaukauna or Appleton North? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I'm not really sure either. but they're a 1 seed for a reason. You got to think, right? Obviously, sitting at 21-3, they've done their job this year.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But Travis, you asked about a sleeper. Just looking at the seeds there, the 9 seed Nina, sitting at 15-9. Say what you want to say about just style of play and everything like that, but the way that Nina plays, with their size and their athleticism and how deep that they go to their bench, they're a team that, if they're playing well, can beat anybody.
Chris, you took my sleeper. So I'll pivot. I totally agree
You
with
don't
Nina.
have to.
I totally agree with Nina. They can play with literally anybody. They show it in the FBA every single night. I'm going to pivot, though, to a possible team that, could make a run. And this is all depending on the health of their best player. 6 seed Superior. They play a lot of Minnesota teams. Getting their stats is kind of a pain in the butt, but they have a Calvin Anderson, who I think he is a Duluth recruit. Coming back from injury, hopeful to be back here in come playoff time, but they'd get a matchup with the Marshfield team. I do like that Calvin Anderson, Chris Pohl matchup a lot. 2 very strong athletes, but I wonder if the Spartans could make a run there in that lower half.
All right, we'll move on to Sectional 2 in Division 1, or we're going to be here all night. And this is the group that includes your Hartford Orioles, Coach Smith. We're going to give you this one off so as to not give any bulletin board material to anybody. So just put yourself on mute so you don't feel the push to come in here. But Colton, why is Coach Smith's team the favorite in Go?
Because of Coach Smith, obviously. Look at him. Come on.
So this is a group that
baseline bump.
This is a group that's kind of all over the place. You've got really good FRCC teams. You've got Classic 8 teams, Greater Metro, North Shore. 4 or 5 different conferences represented, with 11 different teams that have winning records out of 18 teams in this group. So really deep, really balanced. A lot of teams I think that you could look at as potential teams to come out. But Colton, go ahead with your preview that doesn't involve Coach Smith's team winning it.
Well, if I'm looking at it strictly from who is the favorite out of this, I think it'd come down to that top seed in De Pere. They've done it before. Coach Winchester. They don't necessarily have, the Kinzeigers, the kids that they've had in the past, but they just play really well. They just beat a Notre Dame team that was as hot as any team in the state. They beat them pretty handily this past Thursday to clinch the FRCC game, or FRCC outright. So them as the 1 seed, I think you're looking at as a favorite. But yeah, we got teams from a lot of different divisions, which make those, there's only 2 games that are played on that Tuesday, but all of those on Friday, those are good games. I look at, you have 8 matchups. Man, 5 to 6 of them I want to tune into. Homestead Menominee Falls, going to be a good one. Germantown Preble. Coach, you get Fondy, who you've played already this year and pushed you as a 13 seed.
And that Fond du Lac team, as I think maybe we talked about it last week in just kind of previewing things. I mean, they've got wins over some really good FBA teams, so that's not an easy matchup for Coach Smith right out of the gates either. But and then Oshkosh North is a 10 seed with the talent that they have. I mean,
they're playing really good basketball right now.
The thing I look at, and you mentioned De Pere is one of the favorites. They absolutely are. There's other teams that have a little bit more star power than De Pere, perhaps. I mean, Bryce Ott at Oshkosh North and Blake Bassett at Arrowhead and Mikey Rogers at Homestead. That's a team that was scary as a 9 seed. Even Sheboygan North has some star power. That could be one of the difference makers potentially for whoever comes out of this group. Is that star power something that will carry the day, especially when you get into that sectional play?
Yeah, I think Oshkosh North is a pretty big popular pick to make a run. If you look at just what they've done in the last month, they have wins over Appleton North, Beaver Dam. They gave Seymour the only loss of the year. Yes, it's a Division III team, but they beat them by 22. They pushed Kakana. They lost by one. By I think it was late second free throws by Andrew Jensen to win that one. So they're clicking and playing at the right time. One team that we haven't talked too much about is that 3 seed Brookfield East team, Greater Metro, one of the better conferences in the state. Um, they split it 4 ways. They've got a really really talented freshman and Max McMullen and TJ Platts as a senior. Um, I don't think we, Coach, because you're on here, we don't necessarily talk about your squad near as much as I think that we could. Um, don't want to come off bias, right, and favoritism or anything, but you guys have played in a North Shore conference. You battled. Sam Richter's playing really well. Um, you've got you guys defend and compete at a really high level. I wouldn't want to play you guys come playoff time.
All right. Well, let's move on to sectional 3.
He
Because
stayed mute that whole
I
time.
know. Credit to him. Credit to him. Now he's going to talk about all these D3 or these other Division I teams that he's going to play at state and give them bulletin board material, which is fine. But sectional 3, the question I want to ask here is, why is this the year that the Big 8 takes care of business? What is different about this year that allows them to get to state? It's been a while. Sun Prairie East represented the Big 8 a few years ago. But the Madison teams, it's been a little while. Verona is one of the higher seeds. Middleton, they haven't been there for a while, either of those teams. Why is this year different for the Big 8 teams?
Well, I think one thing is that it's, some other teams that have been in the recent past, some other teams that have been like up there in those 1, 2, 3, even 4 seeds, right, are not as high as they've normally have, right? Like a Wanakee sitting in a 4 seed, right, is not the norm for them. Kettle Moraine being 15-9 is not the norm for them as of recent, right?
Arrowhead's not in this one.
Right. I mean, but you do have a team like Beloit Memorial, who I think is lightning in a bottle, man. Like those guys, with the Hereford kid, I mean, they can make a lot of noise.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about like a school with history, right? Madison Memorial is definitely one of those teams who has a lot of history behind it. And to see them sitting in the 1 seed again doesn't really surprise people necessarily, right? But maybe it does in the recent past. It surprises some people a little bit. But I guess I think that there's a lot of balance in this one, and a lot of teams who could make real runs. Even like a 7 seed like Monona Grove has some very interesting wins this year.
The only loss they have since February, coach, is to you.
How about that?
Otherwise, they're 8. They've won 8 of those games, 8-1 since February or since January 31st.
They have a lot of talent, a lot of young talent, right? Where if you can continue to be that consistent with that young of a core, sometimes those kids don't know any better and they just continue to do their thing, right? I don't know. I mean, you have a really talented Verona team too that is going to give people a run for their money. I just think that there are a lot of teams that can really challenge, a Madison Memorial here. I mean, I really even believe that a Kettle Moraine or Badger team could take Madison Memorial to the ropes and see what happens there.
Trav, if you were to ask me, is this the year the Big 8 gets back to the Kohl Center? I think, though, I would say yes. With the way that this sectional is played out, with the way, like Chris had said, with the way Kettle Moraine might be down a touch, with Wanakee being down a touch, Arrowhead not being in there. If the question is, does the Big 8 get back to the Kohl Center in 2026? I think my answer is yes. Do I know whether it's going to be Madison Memorial, Middleton, or Verona? I don't know if I could sit here and give you a concrete answer to that because they have split their season series. Middleton just beat Madison Memorial on this past Thursday to
Yep.
clinch a share of the conference title. And Verona, I think they beat Middleton 2 weeks ago. So
All right. Well, let's move on to sectional 4, where obviously the big headliner is Wisconsin Lutheran.
bless you. Oh, bless you.
Thank goodness for the sneeze button. Wisconsin Lutheran, the headliner, undefeated, everybody's top team in the state, top 10 nationally in a number of places. West Allis Central, if they had Yusuf Gray, I think that was the game of the year that many people were looking forward to potentially in a sectional game.
Yusuf Gray
Even
might
without
be.
Yusuf Gray, I guess that is a question. That is even without Yusuf Gray question mark, because there is now talk that potentially he could come back at some point, which is interesting. But it took a little hit there with him being injured and out for an extended time and potentially out for this one. I mean, I don't want to disregard everybody else. Maybe give me a team or two to keep an eye on that is well positioned to win a game or two. But then let's getting to Wisconsin Lutheran and West Allis Central.
I'll let you take it first, Colton.
So if I'm looking at
thunder.
if I'm looking at a team that's going to win a game or two, that means that they're not going to be in the same regional as Wisco and West Allis Central. So I'm looking at a Franklin. I'm looking at a Racine Case. I'm looking at a Kenosha Bradford. Racine Case did win the Southeast Conference. I think they went undefeated. But a Kenosha Bradford squad has got some good players. And this past Thursday, Franklin only beat them by 4. So do I think a 6-seed Kenosha Bradford could, take care of a Riverside in a semifinal and then go to Case and upset Case in a regional final? Absolutely. I think that could be a storyline that you see one of these underseeded teams, a sleeper team, so to speak, make that sectional run.
And I think we're on the same page here. I mean, right away, the first team that I look at is a Franklin team, and I think things are set up really nicely for them to, win their regional. A very well coached team, a team that's always in the mix every single year for, the upper half of their conference, if not contending to try to win it. And just a team who just seems to kind of always compete against whoever they're playing against. I don't know a ton about Racine Case, but obviously they're a team that has an opportunity as well to kind of run their way pretty. I don't want to say easily, but run their way pretty confidently to a sectional semi, with West Allis Central most likely. And if Gray comes back for West Allis Central, I think that is going to be a really good competitive game against Wisconsin Lutheran in the final. But at the same time, I mean, the more and more I watch Wisco play, I just don't know how you beat them. The size, the athleticism, the skill,
the defense.
The way they defend. I mean, when they turn it on defensively, it's over.
It feeds into that offense.
Yep, it does.
Trav, you mentioned, it's not every year that you have this sort of standout in this sort of in a sectional, a team that just sits head and shoulders above. Even two teams that sit kind of head and shoulders above, so it's tough to give kind of that sleeper pick. But
I mean, we've said it before, right? Like on the show that you're talking about this Wisco team potentially being better than those Germantown teams of the past, that Spash teams of the past, right?
Yeah.
Where this is an all-time team.
Yeah.
And they're not overly senior powered either, right? Like they have a lot of young talent on that team and a lot still coming that isn't even getting playing time yet on the varsity level.
Yeah, their 3 levels went like 66-0 this year.
Correct. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Like, not their varsity didn't go undefeated this year. Their program did.
Yeah. That's scary.
Any final thoughts in Division I before we move on to Division II?
I think those first 2 divisions, or those first 2 sectionals, 1 and 2, are going to be really, really fun to watch. I think there's quite a few different options that could come out of each. I think D3, we're getting a Big 8 team, and I think D4, we're going to get one of the better sectional 3. We're going to get a Big 8 team, and sectional 4, we're going to get one of those monster mashups that you want to see every year.
All right, let's take a look at Division II. We'll start in Sectional 1, a sectional that, as we I think mentioned last week, has to an extent been dominated by those Mississippi Valley teams in the La Crosse area. La Crosse Central especially has made it a habit to get to Madison. They are the top seed in the lower half of that bracket. They're the 2 seed in the lower half of that bracket, with Onalaska, the 1 seed, who's no stranger to a lot of success as well. And that's a potential great sectional semifinal matchup that we would look forward to. And then in the top half of that bracket, you've got River Falls as the 1 seed. You've got some of the Big Rivers teams in there. You've got some of the Great Northern teams in there. In last year, though, that just like in Division I, we talked about Marshfield kind of bucking the trend and getting to state out of that group last year. It was Wausau East that advanced through Sectional 1, kind of bucking that trend. So are we looking at getting back to the norm of Onalaska or Central representing Sectional 2, or is there somebody else that could maybe come out of that top part of that bracket?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like exactly what you said, Travis, about I think we're kind of getting back to the norms of an Onalaska La Crosse Central type coming out of there. That's a huge rivalry. I know Coach Ferget really well, and I know like he's always has his guys ramped up and ready to go in the postseason, and he loves those matchups with Anna. So that'll be interesting to see what happens if that game comes into fruition there. But like then you look at like a Rhinelander team that is interesting.
They just went and beat Mosinee in double OT to share the Great Northern.
Right, so they lost earlier in January to Mosinee by like 14, and then they come back, the last game of the season and beat those guys by 2. And having seen Mosinee a couple times on film, I mean those guys are really talented. So I mean that tells me that Rhinelander, because I haven't seen them outside of just looking at stats and everything and results, that they're pretty talented, right? Because that Mosinee team is no slouch. So that'll be interesting to see what happens on that side of the bracket, and if they are able to get to a sectional final and how they stack up against a team like Onalaska or La Crosse Central.
Here's my issue with Rhinelander potentially.
Mm-hmm.
They played a D5 team. They played a D4 team. They played a lot of games against D3 teams, whereas some of the other teams like River Falls, the top seed in that group, played most of their games against D1 and D2. Now those 2 teams played against each other just last week, River Falls and Rhinelander, and River Falls won by 1 point. But I think we talked about it on the girls' side. I default a lot of times to the schedule you played, and especially the divisions in opposition that you played throughout the year. And I just struggle to see Rhinelander with that schedule making that kind of headway.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at River Falls, who just destroyed La Crosse Central too by 20.
Yeah.
So there's a whole big circle of things that you can really look at there.
Couple notes from this. I think one thing that's very different in this boys bracket compared to the girls bracket is the good games we're going to get in regionals.
Mm-hmm.
I think that point differential, Trav, that you pointed out in the girls is not going to be near as big on the boys side. I look at just the bottom half and I see a possible Onalaska West Salem or an Onalaska New London. I look at Fox Valley and La Crosse Central playing. I would be way more apt even to pick a New London upset or a Fox Valley upset, but we're talking about teams that when they go and play those higher seeds, now they're traveling 3+ hours.
Yeah.
New London is going 3 hours to West Salem on Friday night. Fox Valley Lutheran would be doing the same to La Crosse Central. So while I think that Fox Valley Lutheran is a very good squad, they play in they're in the Bay Conference this year. Bay Conference is pretty solid. That makes a world of difference. I think is that 3 hour bus ride.
I think it does too. It's really hard to tell how a teenager is going to react to something like that and how their preparation is. I mean,
Every teenager I've been around, including the teams that we've coached in very much in football, they don't react well.
no.
If there's any difference in their deviation in their schedule, whatever, they can't handle it.
So that's why, I mean, I would give an edge to West Salem in that semifinal. I would give an edge to a possible La Crosse Central if Fox Valley travels there on that Saturday, simply due to that cross-state travel that those Bay teams would have to take.
But I mean, it says something about being the higher seed and doing your work during the regular season, and that's why I mean you get those types of advantages.
Yep.
Moving on to sectional 2, we've got the upper part of that bracket, which is much more Fox Valley focused. A lot of the FRCC teams in there, some of that new Glacier Trails group in there, and then a bottom part of that bracket that is much more Milwaukee and Milwaukee suburbs based, including some MPS teams, including some Glacier Trails, North Shore type of teams. Seems to be a little bit more strength maybe in the bottom part of that bracket, but you've also got some very good teams in Notre Dame and West Appear, and throw Plymouth in there as well, that are in the top part of that bracket. And want to give a shout out, just in case we don't, to a much improved Sheboygan South team. I think we did talk about them a couple weeks ago, maybe. A team that actually requested down in almost every sport, including boys basketball. So they're actually playing down from Division One, but have certainly shown a lot of improvement. They're 15-9 now. They finished 6-6 in that Glacier Trails conference, but it fits them a lot better. So want to give them some flowers. But again, a kind of a regional, kind of not rivalry, but matchup we could be looking at sectionals. Fox Valley, Milwaukee area, take it away.
When I look at this sectional, I look at some teams that are coming in on some heaters. I mean, we talked about Notre Dame. Notre Dame was on a roll. They beat, to get to the point of playing for the FRCC championship, they had to beat Bayport, West Appear, and Sheboygan North, all to get to that Notre Dame game. They did that in 3 consecutive games. Now, that De Pere game obviously didn't go well, but you're talking about a team that came in hot. You look at Plymouth. They've won 11 of their last 13 games. Their only 2 losses are to Port Washington. One was the most recent game, which was a 1-point defeat to Port Washington. So a Plymouth team that has a Caden Schultz that can light it up at any time. As a 3 seed, they can make a run. And then in the bottom half, Port Washington has been on a run all year, if we're just being honest, right? They've got 1 loss on the year. So you can say they've been on a run all year. But then a Nicolay team that is just clicking here at the end as well. So when I look at this sectional, I see 4 teams, and I didn't even touch a Slinger or West Appear, but we're talking about 4 teams that are literally coming in, playing their best basketball right now.
Yeah, the top half of the sectional in 1A is interesting, but not nearly as interesting to me as the bottom half, simply just because of really the juggernauts right there. I mean, being in the North Shore, I can't even make sense myself of what happened in the North Shore this year, because of all the teams beating each other and teams splitting, and like, well, that team beat that team twice, but that team also lost to that team twice, and that team over there split with them, and it was like all over the place, right? I mean, in Port Washington, okay, they leave our conference and they go to the Glacier Trails, but they still play a bunch of teams from the North Shore, and they take care of business there, right? And, you know, the interesting thing is like even a Cedarburg team, okay? If you look at Cedarburg's scores recently, they've competed with Nicolay and they've competed with Slinger. So like they're not a slouch. Like going to play, I think they're gonna beat Vincent, and then I think they're gonna give Port Washington at least for a strong amount of that game, a run for their money. Um, so, but then you got that Nicolay Slinger game, right? That's most likely gonna happen, and
Regional final.
yeah, like that doesn't happen often. A game like that, right? Um, Nicolay can beat anybody. They've also shown that they play down sometimes. So it kind of depends on what team shows up for them. Slinger, they are arguably the most talented team in this sectional. So we'll see what happens there, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot that we could really talk about for a while in that sectional. But again, like you said, Notre Dame is super battle tested. So who knows whoever comes out of the bottom, and if Notre Dame is able to come through there, you're talking about one hell of a game.
Yeah, this is another sectional where you're going to get really good regional final matchups, whether it's Port Washington and Cedarburg, Nicolay Slinger. Again, we're talking what ifs, but a West De Pere Plymouth game, I'd love to go to that one.
There's 7 teams out of that whole sectional that could get through.
Yeah,
I think 7. It's loaded.
Well, let's talk about Sectional 3 as we continue our look at Division 2 of the boys basketball playoffs in the top part of that bracket. I think the storyline here is, and really in the lower part of that bracket too, the Badger Conference against the suburban Milwaukee schools. And it has not gone well for the Badger Conference most of the time in recent memory. Sauk Prairie, McFarland, Mount Horeb, is kind of those Badger Conference representatives going against, or even Beaver Dam, against New Berlin West, Tulsa West, Brookfield Central, who are oftentimes playing against Division I opponents, playing Division I non-conference games. Again, hasn't gone well. So as we look at that group, which does, by the way, include my Reedsburg Beavers, is a really, I think this is as good as you could get for a 9 seed. But get to go play our biggest rival, Baraboo, in the first playoff game on Tuesday night. A good way to end the season, regardless of how things go for somebody. Because if you're gonna have a playoff game where neither team really is looking like a favorite to get very far, might as well make it a rivalry game for that one. But Badger versus those suburban Milwaukee schools, is it gonna go any better for the Badger this year?
I think there's an opportunity, yes. When I wrote my preview for this and I was listing favorites for each sectional, I don't know if there's necessarily, I have a favorite, but I don't know if there's necessarily a favorite in this sectional. When you look at, a New Berlin West, that's a really good team. Tulsa West, Brook Central, Beaver Dam, Sauk, McFarland, Mount Horeb. Like, who's the favorite to come out of that group? You're getting...
There are going to be some fireworks in Division 2 this year.
Yeah.
There are going to be some great high school basketball games in Division 2. It's loaded.
Yeah.
If you ask me, my favorite to come out of this group, I think it's Tulsa West. I think they have the biggest star power, obviously, with Klosky and Jalen Brown, but they've also taken some losses this year. Now, a lot of, several of them are Division I opponents, but to me, with those two, again, I look at star power and I look at, the strength of your schedule. They've got it. Brookfield Central, another one in that mix. New Berlin West. I like the Badger teams. I just don't know that week in and week out they play that level that is going to be able to compete with some of those other schools. I think Mount Horeb has the best chance. Obviously, having a Josh Manchester, they found a way to win without him. I think they improved without him overall when he was out, and now having him back, I think just gives them another gear. So I think they're the best positioned to challenge some of those other teams.
Yeah,
Would
you
we
make a
be?
good point with Mount Horeb. I really do think that that helped them a lot. Having Manchester out now, all of a sudden, he's back and he's healthy, and with all those guys having to step up their game and improve themselves, right, to keep them afloat while he was out. I mean, now they're all together, and you got to think that the confidence level for Mount Horeb is pretty high right now, seeing as they could win without Manchester, and then they get them back too. So that's just an added bonus there. But yeah, there's a lot of teams that are getting healthy too. I mean, Parker Blank played in their last game for Beaver Dam,
Yeah,
so he's back. I don't know if he's 100% yet, but I mean, having him back in their lineup, I think, feeds their confidence as well to get whole again. Like you said, Tosa West, man, they're super super talented. I'm just unsure of the supporting cast that comes around those stars to see what can happen there. So I'm
yeah,
not completely bought in there, but obviously when you have star players like Brown and Klosky, you can go a long ways there.
yeah. Are we also just looking at this? Like Mount Horeb has the better chance, probably McFarland too, because if you look at the way that those southeast schools are split,
Yeah.
New Berlin West, Brook Central, and Tosa West are all in the top. Even a 6 seed Milwaukee Lutheran team is very talented. They're in the top, and you look at the bottom, and this is why one of my dark horses to make a run at the sectionals this year as a lower seed is a Waukesha West. They play, in that Classic 8. They have
Well, and
Tyler
I'll tell you,
Evenson. So,
Waukesha West plays a 1-3-1 that is very unique, having played against it the last couple of years, and it's troublesome at times to be able to get through a defense like that you don't get to see often. And I think that we were talking about a team before you guys were, anyways. I was muted. Okay, but a team like Oshkosh North who plays that 1-3-1, right? That teams struggle with because you don't
yeah,
see those types of defenses all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, then you look at, but you also look like they're playing Milton in that first round there. Milton has a win over Beaver Dam, so like those guys can play. We played those guys; they can really light it up. If they get hot from the perimeter, they're trouble.
As an
Monroe has a
example of
great offense.
as an example of schedule, Waukesha West played 17 games against Division One teams this year.
Yeah.
Mount Horeb played 2.
Yep.
McFarland played 2. So there's just a big difference in schedule between a Badger small team and a Classic 8 team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
All right, let's go sectional 4 in Division 2. Whitefish Bay is a top seed on the top part of that bracket. You've got Waterford as a top seed on the bottom part of that bracket. I think if we're all just being honest, the depth in this sectional is not quite there compared to probably the other other sectionals, excuse me. But as we look at sectional 4, what stands out?
I love watching Waterford play.
Yeah.
They are a lot of fun to watch, and they can really mix it up and do a lot of things to hurt you. I think, I mean, just watching them play against Germantown recently, I mean, they handled them, and that was senior night, and they were playing some funky rotations as well. So, I was really impressed with them.
I think that bottom half is a little bit deeper, but then you also look at the top and you see a science team that has moved up to Division 2 this year. Obviously had those issues with earlier in the year, the forfeiture of wins. I don't believe they played. I don't believe Deuce Burks has played at all this year for their science. Neither is one of the other transfers that I think transferred out. But they play an independent schedule, so they play some teams that are not very good, but then they also schedule games against like your Nicolais and etc. So that's a team that I would watch at the top. But and then at the bottom, 4 seed Greendale, they got a Mr. Basketball semifinalist in Xavier Castile that's averaging nearly 30 points a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, on the top half there, like MAS is a really interesting spot to look at where they could end up. I mean, I think that they have a very good shot of running through to the sectional. And Whitefish Bay, they're super talented. Like, they just missed out on a share of the North Shore because of Homestead upsetting them the last game of the season. But the way they play, once in a while there are teams that can come back and kind of nip them because they don't really run away with some games sometimes. Right, they're very capable of playing an up-tempo game, and they proved that against us when we played them. But at the same time, like if they see a slower game, that's how they want to play, like that with their zone. So there's times where like maybe, I mean, who knows what could happen with Catholic Memorial there. They're an interesting team, hovering around 500 the whole year. I don't really know much about Golden Mirror, so I'm not going to speak on them. But I mean, the record is there. I'm just not sure that the opponents were there with them necessarily.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap up Division II there and move on to Division III. Starting in Sectional 1, the top part of that bracket, a lot of middle border conference teams along with a few Heart of North teams mixed in there. Bottom part of that bracket, a little more spread out from conference perspectives. We've got Great Northern represented. We've got the Clover Belt. We've got the Cooley Conference, South Central even, Central Wisconsin, kind of all over the place. But as we look at Sectional 1 in Division III, what are we thinking there?
You look at those middle border teams, and they just beat up on each other all throughout the year. Again, I don't know if there's necessarily a quote unquote favorite here. The top 3 seeds in that top half are middle border teams. Altoona in the bottom is a middle border team. Those teams just three of them split the conference title this year on that last day of the year. When you look at the Heart of North team, Northwestern is one that pops out because they've made deep runs before, but also the Heart of North has struggled against the middle border squads come playoff time in years past. Usually, your Prescotts, your St. Croix Centrals, those are the ones that are advancing there. But I look at that bottom half, and there are some really interesting matchups simply because of the differences in conferences. You've got an Altoona as your 1 coming out of the middle border, GT, your 2 from the Cooley, the 3 seed is a Mosinee from the Great Northern, and then Stanley Boyd out of the Clover Belt. So that bottom half is really, 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 really intriguing in my eyes.
Yeah, when you talk about a lot of familiarity between teams, it's interesting to see those potential matchups and just where they can go. On the boys' side of things, I feel like just because, outside of, obviously there's some outliers on the girls' side of things, but usually if you've had like a team that's won twice on the boys' side, it's not necessarily always a guarantee for that third time to happen. It's always really, really hard usually in challenging that third time. But you mentioned one of the last teams that you mentioned there. I really, really like Mosinee. I think that they're a team that can really make some noise. They've proven that they can play against a lot of teams this year. So I like what they bring to the table as a team who could kind of make a really big run.
Yeah, that's a really experienced team too, and they've got 2 really strong forwards in Braden Renke and Treve Stoffel, and I think Coach Lindsay has like 13 seniors on that squad or something like that. So it's come playoff time, seniors and that kind of team camaraderie can really make a difference.
Yeah, and they're big and they're physical and they're skilled and just do a lot of things right.
A couple things of note that caught my eye looking over the Bound Power Index. The top 5 teams in that top part of the bracket are all from the middle border. That's not how the seeds played out. But one of them is Amory, who I think could be a sleeper type team when you have a player like Keaton Woolen that can go out and get you a lot of points. That's a team to keep an eye on. And then
it's funny that you say that because I have 10 seed Somerset as kind of my first round upset alert, simply because they beat Prescott recently. They beat a really good Regis team. That middle border again. They just beat up on each other, and anybody can beat anybody.
Yeah, and then talking schedules, Mosinee played 12 games against Division II teams plus 2 games against Division I teams. Stanley Boyd has played no games against Division I or II teams and played 14 of their games against Division IV teams and 3 against Division V teams. So the schedule and opponent imbalance in some of these cases is pretty striking when you get into that Division III level where some teams are playing up against D2 competition frequently in their conference. Some teams are playing down against a lot of Division 4 teams, and what that means come playoff time.
I
All right.
don't want to. Before we move on, I don't want to just skip over Altoona and GT. Those are two really good squads that are very guard oriented. Altoona's got Grayson Becker, Owen Gunderson, two juniors that have already gone over 1,000 points. GT's got Trav. You saw him at the Midwest Players Classic. They've got Mason Barone, Talon Fabian. If either of those teams get a matchup with Mosinee, it's kind of clash of styles that I think would be really fun matchups to see.
All right, sectional 2 in Division 3. As we look at that one, top part of the bracket, highlighted by Freedom and Seymour. Now, Seymour did take a loss late in the year against Oshkosh North. No shame in that. A very good, larger opponent. But just like Wisco and West Allis Central, Freedom Seymour in a potential sectional semifinal was one that a lot of people circled coming into the season. Bottom part of the bracket, good teams, not the flashy name of or records, but a number of teams from the Northeastern Conference, the Eastern Wisconsin Conference. Again, a lot of attention paid to the top part. So let's start there. Thoughts on Seymour, Freedom, seeding, how that played out. Also, what does that mean? Nothing in terms of the sectional semifinal location, but what do we like about that sectional semifinal potential?
I think we're just on a collision course for it.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it didn't matter who was 1 or 2. I think it was right, personally. Travis, you brought it up earlier, right, with the star power and like passing the eye test. To me, and I've seen both teams, Freedom and Seymour, play in person more than once this year, and a bunch on film. Like, I think Freedom is the better team. I think that they bring more to the table on both sides of the ball. I think Seymour I think they play really well together. I don't see somebody necessarily on Seymour's team that can just take over a game. And in the postseason, a lot of times, I think that's what you're looking for, right? Is guys that just take over for you and kind of
games,
push you to the next round when your back's against the wall type thing. And nothing against the bottom half of this bracket, but I just think we're looking at one or two teams, and they're in the top half. It's either Freedom or Seymour, and we're going to see that. We're going to see that happen. I think. I just don't see a team that can stand with either of them up until that point.
Coach Smith doesn't want to give any attention to the bottom part of the bracket, but Colton, let's give you the chance to give us a rundown on that bottom part of the bracket.
There are a handful of teams that I think could compete in that sectional semi. I think it starts at the top with Brilliant. They play a really slow it down pace. They've been to the state tournament in years past. I think as early as like 4 or 5 years ago, they were at the state tournament. But I look at a Xavier 2 seed or 3 seed that they lost to Seymour. They lost to Seymour twice. One was a 13-point loss. One was a 4-point loss. They got a really good junior shooting duo in Logan Ramchek and Kyler Black. Those two can light it up. And then, honestly, I look at a 5-seed Winneconne that they can just go out and score the ball. Like, Seymour beat them the first time 109-85. They just recently beat them 90-87. Winneconne is averaging
86
points per game. They have 3 kids that average either 19 or more, including a freshman point guard and Drew Lenz. If you're giving me a dark horse to make a run at possibly even the Kohl Center, I'm looking at a Winneconne team. They've got strength. Brody Schaefer is an Iowa football recruit. That's no slouch. And if I'm seeing that as a 5 seed in my half sectional, I'm kind of shaking my head, being like, oh man. If I'm Brilliant, I'm saying I've got to play that team in a regional final, possibly. Little Shoot is the 4, being like, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a team that averages that many points a game and they can just absolutely fill it up from all over the place, it's hard to stop when you have multiple options to go to, right?
I I do though believe that the Freedom Seymour game is one that is worthy of being played on the Kohl Center floor.
Yeah, and there's a number of those games with when we look from Division One all the way through five that we're just not going to be able to see on the biggest stage, and it's unfortunate. And
Yeah,
that's definitely one of them.
it is.
All right, well, let's move on to sectional 3. That is the sectional featuring Richland Center. So Colton will put himself on mute, much to his chagrin, in this
Yeah, I'll
one.
try.
And we'll take a look at it. Aquinas, when you look at power rankings and things like that, a defending state champion, they're the 1 seed and certainly deservedly so. But a lot of teams, again, from a number of conferences, you've got SWC, SWAL, Capital Conference, South Central Conference represented, kind of all over the place. Pretty strong group when you look at it. 9 teams with winning records out of 13, and 11 of the 13 have double-digit wins. So, a pretty strong group as you look at things. I look at Lodi coming out of the Capital Conference. I think that is an interesting team to keep an eye on as a potential upset. They're a 7 seed. Now,
They're a fun team to watch.
Yeah, and the bad part there is they get matched up with Aquinas, who, by the way, I'm sorry, is not the top seed in that group. Mineral Point is the top seed in the first sectional. But again, that's just the top part of that bracket. And then the bottom part of that bracket, you've got Lake Mills as the top seed. You've got Lakeside Lutheran, very competitive program. You've got East Troy, Columbus, Watertown Luther Prep. Really strong group overall in sectional 3. Maybe not, there's not a Freedom or Seymour, but there are a lot of really good teams that we're going to have very competitive games up and down Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, starting down, I'll start at the bottom and work my way up, I guess. But you look at a Lake Mills team who has scheduled themselves really well this year, right? They've beat a good Sauk Prairie team. They've played Freedom already. It didn't go their way. They lost by 18. They've handled Lakeside Lutheran in the first matchup, and then it was a 2-point game, I think, the second time around. A team that's really been battle tested. They beat Watertown Luther Prep by 8 late in the season. So they've also beat a Lodi team who I just said is a really fun team to watch. A lot of youth on their side there. So like they've tested themselves with their section quite a bit already, right? I think that they're a pretty strong favorite to come out of that side. But that whole rivalry thing with Lakeside Lutheran, that could be a pretty interesting game when it comes down to it, especially because the last game was decided by 2 points. At the top half of that sectional, you got obviously with Mineral Point and Aquinas there, but I kind of was looking at a little bit too with Mauston, and can they hang with those teams too, with the Navis kid averaging 21 a game, and what maybe they could do when it comes to a matchup with Aquinas, and how that kind of stacks up. I'm not really sure there. I don't know if you have an opinion about that, Travis.
Yeah, I saw Mauston. They lost to Reedsburg early in the season, and
Okay.
they got hot late for sure. They really went on a run late in the season. The South Central, we've seen Wisconsin Dells be successful out of there, and going back many years, Adams Friendship was very successful. I don't know that it was top to bottom as good this year as maybe we've seen in the past. The Dells is down a little bit. They've traditionally been the top team in that league. So I don't know that Mauston's schedule did them any great favors, and I don't know that they really pushed themselves outside of the league either, to be quite honest with you.
Right. I'm seeing like they played Berlin and they kind of got smacked there by like 72-46. So that doesn't.
Yeah, lost to a kind of mid-level Mississippi Valley team, Toma, pretty convincingly. They lost convincingly to a Royal team that's a good program, but D5. So they've got the individual talent. That's for sure. But
yeah,
I don't know, just hanging with all those other teams if it's quite there. I see Colton has his hand raised. Maybe he wants to chime in and give bulletin board material. Go ahead.
Sure do. I'm not very good at keeping my mouth shut. So, one team, it's a conference foe of ours um, that I think could go on a run. Uh, I've seen it from an 8-9 seed in the SWC go on a run to a regional championship before. Richland Center Hornets did it.
To be clear, we have
Dodgeville,
not won a regional championship in 45.
regional final. We made it to a regional final as a 9 seed. Sorry. Um, I look at a Dodgeville Dodgers team that shared our conference title, and then when you look at who they've beat 1 seed Mineral Point, they've beat 6 seed Platteville, they've beat 4 seed Lancaster, and they beat New Glarus, who is the 5 seed. Um, it would not be an easy path at all for Coach McGraw's group, but they have literally beat the teams in front of them that they would face in these playoffs, including the top seed in this half sectional.
One I'll say too is never count out New Glarus, just because Coach Cisco has been battle tested and has been there before, and he will for sure have his guys ready to play come postseason here.
And we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the defending state champions, but Aquinas, again, is the 2 seed, not 1 seed, as I incorrectly stated. But they've got a lot of experience coming back from last year. They've got very good wins. They play in a bigger conference than all of these other teams. And I think they're the favorite, at least in their half sectional, or excuse me, in their sectional.
And I didn't mean to slight them by any means. I do think that they're the favorite to come out of there, even being the 2 seed, simply because, like what you said, right? Like, they play in a conference that is all higher division teams, right? And every game they play is super challenging. So they're a team that's been battle tested, and it's just a matter of, do they have a hiccup here or there and open the door for someone else.
All right, let's move on to the last sectional in Division 3, which is sectional 4. The top part of that bracket, really compelling teams here: Oostburg, Lake Country Lutheran, Kettle Moraine Lutheran, throw in Brown Deer into that top group. And then in the bottom part of that bracket, we're looking at one of those other really highly anticipated potential sectional semifinal matchups in a third game between Racine Lutheran and Racine St. Catherine's. But you've also got a very good St. Joe's team down there with star power and experience. So maybe not the depth of some of the other sectionals, but some really, really good teams at the top in that sectional 4.
Yeah, I'm circling that sectional semifinal possibility of Lutheran St. Cat's round 3. I mean,
another game that's a shame that we're not seeing on a different floor, right?
Correct. Those 2 teams are so fun to play. Again, it's gonna be tougher for Ralu to get there. They'll have to either play a Shoreland or a Kenosha St. Joe's team that is a Metro Classic rival. And Kenosha St. Joe's, I mean, they've proven that they can play with anybody in that D3, in that Metro Classic. So, but yeah, I would love to see round 3 of Ralu St. Cat's at the bottom. At the top, I really, really like Oostburg and Lake Country. They're 2 really solid squads. Oostburg has the 2 senior leaders in Cade Dirksey and JJ Zavachin that can take games over, quite frankly. But then I look at, if you're asking me for what kind of team could make a run, I like a Brown Deer. I like a 6 seed Brown Deer. They've got Cody Jones and Jaden Ragland, 2 senior guards that can light it up, and it's a drop down effect playing from that Woodland Conference. So,
yeah, that's probably one of the more highlighted matchups to look at, right? Is Brown Deer KML.
Yeah.
I think probably a little bit of clash of again, who you play against every single night, and just kind of seeing the different styles of play as well. So that will be an interesting game for sure. But I mean, you look at Oostburg and LCL, I think that those are the cream of the crop there, and we're most likely going to see them. But there are going to be some really good games in this sectional for sure.
I thoroughly enjoy the sectional semifinals that we're going to get in D3 this year.
For sure.
The games that we're going to get 2 games before state that Thursday night, I'm going to have a pickle and
even
if we're not playing,
even
deciding where
even
to go.
the regional final between potentially of like Shoreland Lutheran against Kenosha St. Joe's, like that's going to be one heck of a basketball game.
Yeah.
And then that team, whoever comes out of that one, has a chance against Racine Lutheran. I think. I mean, if they play well, Shoreland Lutheran, they're a well balanced team who can definitely bring the noise a little bit. So I think that we're looking at a really good sectional there.
If it gets to Raleigh, Racine, St. Cat's, where's that game going to be at?
I don't know.
Where have they played in the past? They've played in the playoffs before, right?
That's true. That I don't know offhand, but it's always interesting when you get two teams that are within 4 miles of each other, 5 miles of each other, and figuring out that they're playing a neutral site game a half hour away or something.
What's around there?
Trav, are you looking at it?
Last year they played in a regional final. And other years more recently, hasn't Ralu been D4 more recently? So maybe they haven't actually been matched up that often.
It's a lot of fun to watch Racine St. Cat's and just watching Lamont Hamilton play, man. Like he doesn't have there's not a shot on the floor he doesn't like, but there's also there's not a shot on the floor he can't make.
Didn't he miss the last game, Colton?
Yeah, suspension. He was out due to 2 techs from the game before, but he'll be back in come playoff time. So
that hopefully that is not an issue in the playoffs. He's had that issue in football as well. So all right. Well, let's move on to Division 4. We're creeping through here. We're a little over halfway through. Division 4, top part of Sectional 1. Maybe not quite as strong as the bottom part of that sectional. You've got Colfax, Clear Lake, Unity, McDonald Central, not the most sparkling of records. And then you look at the bottom part of that group, and you got a lot of those Clover Belt teams, especially in the Clover Belt West, that are really, really good. Fall Creek, Regis. You've also got Durand, Arkansas, Osseo Fairchild. I'd throw Luther in there as a team to keep an eye on. A little bit of an imbalance, perhaps, in terms of the strength of these two groups and how they're split. But who in the top part stands the best chance as you look at maybe matching up against those stronger teams in the bottom part?
They're not the 1, 2, or 3, and they have to play a first-round game, but I like that McDonald Catholic, McDonald Central, and their odds and their chances of getting out of that half-sectional simply, I think that they play a little bit of a tougher schedule with who they play twice a year. But I do like that Colfax squad. They got some really young talent. Russell Polkowski, as a sophomore, has played really, really well for them. But I do like McDonald in that top part.
This is a sectional where, like, it almost is like, man, I wish they could just see the entire thing and make it a little bit more well-rounded. This is a perfect example of that, right? Where the top half is maybe not as appealing as the bottom half.
Well, I think if you look at, we don't know where the WIAA number would be, but in the bottom power index, there's 5 teams in the bottom bracket that would be ahead of anybody in the top part of that bracket.
Yep.
I would guess that the top 4 or the 4 teams, Fall Creek, Regis, Durand, and Osseo, would be ahead of anybody in that top bracket, most likely, even in the WIAA system. So
to put it in perspective, in the Dun St. Croix, Durand, Arkansas was the champion in that division. They are the 4 seed in the bottom half. Colfax, Clear Lake, and Chautauqua finished 2 through 4 in the Dun St. Croix, and they are the top 3 seeds in that top half.
Yeah, that right there. Like I said, it's a prime example of like, hey, let's see the entire thing, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. And maybe we have some great matchups across the board. But like I said, this is just an example of like, hey, do we need to rethink and relook at this kind of stuff?
Biggest matchup that I'd be looking forward to in this, though, is that Fall Creek Regis Game 3. They've played 2 games. Both were really close. They played 2 games within 7 days of each other. So if they do get to that third game, you're talking about a third game within like 20 some days of each other. So
How long has Coach Miller been at Regis? Is this year 2 or 3, something like that?
yeah.
And then you've got Rick Storley, who's been at Fall Creek for ever. He probably had 20 or 25 seasons in before Connor Miller, got to Regis and started playing.
Yeah.
And I can't remember now where Connor started. Was he a Fall Creek kid, or did he come from Thorpe?
That I don't know.
I can't remember now. Not that it matters a ton, but yeah, that would be a great game, great number 3 game.
I do think that whoever comes out of that game does come out of the sectional.
Let's move on to sectional 2. However, top part of that bracket, a lot of Merriwood type teams. You've got Marathon as the top seed there. Don't want to overlook Hurley, who's in that group as well. And then in the bottom part of the bracket, Kewanee certainly stands out, undefeated, has taken care of business to this point. But I think you can't overlook Bonduel, Iola Scandinavia, St. Mary Catholic. When you talk top 4 in a group, that's pretty darn tough at the Division 4 level.
Yeah, that bottom reminds me a lot of last year's grouping where it was like Kohler, Howard's Grove, Roncalli. They were all, I think it was sectional 4 last year in D4 that was really, really loaded. That bottom half really, really reminds me of that. Kewanee's undefeated. I think they got 4 or 5 kids that are averaging over 10 points. St. Mary Catholic can light it up. Iola's they haven't lost since Robbins has come back, I don't believe, unless they lost in the last week. And I just didn't pay attention. No, they haven't lost since he came back. They've lost to Bonduel twice, both without Robbins. Both games were still single-digit points, single-digit deficits. So we're talking about regional final games. Iola, Bonduel, Kewanee, St. Mary Catholic. Those are some really, really good potential regional final matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing what Iola can do at full force there. This bottom half seems to be a little bit stronger, right? Because, I don't know. I'm not as knowledgeable, obviously, with the lower divisions, but when I look at like a team, like Marathon, right? Like obviously their record shows they're 22-2, and they've had a fantastic year. 1 loss coming against Mosinee. We've seen Mosinee pop up all over the place, right? So, and then they have a little blemish towards the end of the year against, is it Edgar, I think, that they lost to?
Yeah, and Hurley has the possibility of seeing as the 2 seed Edgar as the 7 in that second round, coming off a win over that 1 seed.
Right, so that's really interesting. Okay, I mean, you look at Marathon's conference, and pretty much everybody is 500 or below outside of Marathon. So is the strength there for Marathon? I'm not really sure.
They do challenge themselves. They played a Regis, they played a Rib Lake, Prentice. Who else did they have?
And it's not really their fault either, right? Inside of their league, it's not their fault. They can't schedule, they can't handle, they can't control who they have to play against in their league either. So yeah, they've definitely taken care of business outside of the little blemish with Edgar. But it'll just be interesting to see. And obviously, it's not hard to see that the bottom half of this bracket is just a little bit stronger.
I mean, how much of a difference does that make? And you're a Marathon, you're in the top half of that, and you make it to a sectional final, probably with a very favorable, more favorable path than one of the teams that are going to come out of the bottom. How big of an advantage is that if you're talking about, the competitiveness in those regional final and sectional semifinal games?
Well, I think you can go both ways with it, right? Because okay, well, if you're able to handily beat these guys, let's say, they run through it all the way to the sectional final, and they're able to get some guys some rest, which obviously that doesn't hurt you, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there's something to be said about a rhythm and knocking off some good teams and building confidence. And, you look at the Kewanees and the Iolas and the Bonduels, right? If they get to the sectional final, I mean, they're beating somebody really good multiple times.
Yeah.
I don't know, but then there's the fatigue factor there too. Like, at what point, do you run out of gas, or do
That's
you? I'm not
that's what
sure.
it's like. It's like Marathon only has to play one of those teams. One of those teams has to play two or three of those teams. So
Right.
Interesting note regarding Hurley. Again, they are the 2 seed. They played one game against a Division 4 team this year.
ooh.
One game. They played 19 games against Division 5 teams, played one game against a D3 team, and then a few games against out-of-state opponents. So only playing one game against anybody in your division is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do you know where Hurley is?
I do know where Hurley
Yeah.
is. I went to a football game in Hurley.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, geez, you can't get more northern than that.
All
I
right.
would assume population's not very high up in that area.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons they went to 8-player football is not only were they declining enrollment, but they were having a hard time finding anybody to play. So
Yeah.
Makes sense.
all right, we are on to, let's see, sectional 3 of Division 4 as we start moving into the southern part of the state. You go from far northern part of the state in Hurley to almost as far south as you can get with some of the teams here. A lot of teams from the SWAL in this group, including in the top part of sectional 3. Darlington looks to be a little bit ahead of everybody else in that grouping. Then the bottom part of the bracket, we move more towards the eastern part of the state, as we've got Lomira is the top seed. You've got Horicon, Partyville, Markesan, some Trailways teams. But by most metrics, you're looking at Lomira and Darlington, pretty strong favorites, pretty head and shoulders from a resume perspective ahead of the rest of the teams in their group. Doesn't mean they're going to get there, but there's a pretty sizable gap record-wise, resume-wise.
Yeah, there is. And Darlington's coming off of a season where they're just football champs. And a lot of those kids that are on this basketball team are football players, are really good football players.
And
Zeke
really good
Zuberbuehler,
basketball players, too.
Yeah, Zeke Zuberbuehler, the leading scorer, is got now 2 or 3 D1 offers in football during this basketball season.
Yeah, I mean, you look down their leading score list. Broker Busher, football player. Zeke Zuberbuehler, football player. Ryder Fitzsimmons, football player. Dante Glendenning, Sloan Glendenning. Most of those guys played football. And
yeah, I've looked at I've coached against these guys in the summer. It's basically you're coaching a football team that has skill on the offensive basketball court, and it's a little unfair sometimes how skilled they are on the basketball court with the amount of strength that they have.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about a different team I think that could make some noise is a Cambridge team, right? Obviously, they're a 2 seed, so, like, is it really making some noise? But at the same time, they're a squad that has a close loss to a really good Lakeside Lutheran team. Close loss to somebody I talked about already in a New Glarus recently. So I think that they're a team that could roll right to that matchup with Darlington to see who can advance to that sectional final.
In that bottom, you get Trev, were you going to expound on that at all?
No, I was going to go to the bottom, and I was going to just mention again that Lomira is head and shoulders, but our buddy TJ Zwiefel at Marshall is the 6th seed that has to like where he kind of landed with some Trailways teams in the path. A 6th seed, but in the Bound Power rankings, the number 2 team. So again, he's got to like that path that they have for the Cardinals.
Yeah, he's got a really good playmaker in junior Jalen Miggins. They've already beat 3 seed Partyville. They lost close to 2 seed Horicon. TJ is probably going to be listening to this at 3 o'clock when he gets up to go do some farm work. So he's usually one of our very first listeners on Monday morning. So, hey, TJ, how you doing?
I'm assuming that's the son of Tony Miggins, right?
Yeah. Tony's on staff, so he's an assistant.
Oh, really?
TJ. Yep.
Oh, nice. I remember Tony being at Whitewater around the same time that I was at Whitewater, and his nickname was 50 because he claimed to have a 50-inch vertical. But that dude was a freak athletically, though.
Yeah, his older son, Kenyon, just went, I think he's playing at Dubuque this year, so he graduated last year.
Well, think of how unfair that Marshall team was with him and both of the Kroll brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, anything else in sectional 3 before we continue our our travels around the state.
No, I'm really interested to see if a possible Darlington Lomira matchup. Lomira has the big. They have really good guard play, but they don't have that strength guard play kind of that Darlington has. So
Right.
that'd be a fun sectional final to see.
Sectional 4, top part of that bracket, a lot of teams in the kind of eastern Wisconsin area, Eastern Wisconsin Conference, Big East Conference. Really like some of the matchups that we could see on Friday. You're looking at, let's see, who's the top seed there? Howard's Grove is the top seed. You've got the 2 seed Manitowoc Lutheran. Roncalli's in that group. Winnebago Lutheran. Kohler's still a very solid team. So I really like some of those matchups we'll get pretty early on. And then the bottom part of that bracket, a lot of star power with especially the top seed and a lot of people's favorites, Milwaukee, Juneau, Dooney Johnson, Taka's Tyler. But we don't want to overlook some teams that could give them a push, including Dominican, Cedar Grove, Belgium. We saw the Prairie School make a Cinderella run out of this sectional last year, and I think they've still got something to say this season as well. So interesting, sectional 4 in Division 4.
Yeah, that Dominican team is extremely hard to
Dangerous.
gauge.
Yeah.
Dangerous and hard to gauge.
Yeah.
A number of their players, almost all of their starting 5 and key contributors haven't played a full season. You look at their game against St. Cat's, which they won. Again, Lamont Hamilton was in it, but Demetrius Taylor didn't play. Amari Nixon was back and played. Zeke Jones is back and played. But you're looking at kids on that team that haven't played a lot of games this year, and I don't know the availability of them during this playoff push. So could they be a very big sleeper? Yes. Do I know? No.
Yeah, but I mean, even the first time that they played against Racine St. Cat's, it was only a 9-point game. And Hamilton, I think had 30 in that game, 28 in that game. So I mean, they're just a team that I think, again, new coach this year too, in Nick Ford. So, and if they've been dealing with some guys in and out of the lineup, and if they're all back now, I mean, they're a team that could definitely make a run. And
you hate injuries, right? You really do. But man, they can build you some depth for later in the year.
It's true.
They really, really can.
It's kind of a shame too to see like a 4 seed like Living Word Lutheran have to, potentially get through their first game and then have to match up right away with Milwaukee Juneau. I was talking to their coach just about a week and a half ago, and he was talking to me. He's like, "Oh man," he's like, "It all shapes up again for us to meet Milwaukee Juneau again in the playoffs early on." And he's just like, "I just wish we could kind of get away from them once in a while," because he's talked about playing them in recent years and everything. And but yeah, like Dooney Johnson, when he's playing the way that he's capable of, and then their supporting cast with the athletes that are around there. I'm just at the Division 4 level. We talk about there's still star power, obviously, when you look at like a Dooney Johnson, but there's just not the depth of star power on each team that maybe like a Milwaukee Juneau has compared to other Division 4 teams, and that's why I think they're just a super heavy favorite.
In that top half, a team that isn't a 1 or 2 that jumps out to me is a Roncalli.
Mm-hmm.
They've played this whole year, or not this whole year, but the whole basically 2026 calendar year without a senior 20-point scorer in Donovan Cowley, and he's working his way back. What that means with regards to his availability or his effectiveness come this playoff push, they get that bye, so they don't get to play till Friday. But if he's back and he's contributing and he's getting healthier as the games go on, that's a team that not only could just push, Manitowoc Lutheran, Howard's Grove. I think that if they were to face off against a Juneau, that would be a team that could push a Juneau as well.
It's been interesting with Juneau the last couple of years. Last year, they couldn't quite get past anybody outside the city. In this year, they again played a lot of city teams, obviously, they went outside the city a little bit. Their loss was to West Allis Central. They did beat Whitnall. They went to an out of state tournament, and I don't know the quality of those teams that they played there necessarily, but they didn't play a ton outside the city, and they were bigger opponents. They played Kenosha Bradford. Um, they did beat Kenosha St. Joe, as the team that took them out in the playoffs last year, by the exact same score, by the way, 67-47. But I don't know that they quite did as much as they could have, especially late in the year. And so will that be their undoing again? Again, last year they struggled outside the city, and it showed in the playoffs. They lost by 20 to St. Joe's. I don't know that there's a St. Joe's in their group besides potentially Dominican, but you guys talked about it. Who can you beat? And Dominican showed they can beat really, really good teams. They beat Brown Deer. They beat Prairie School twice. They beat Menominee Falls. They beat New Berlin West, one of the better teams in Division II. They show they can beat teams, but will they, as you said, is a different story. So
that Cedar Grove Belgium team's not one to look over either as the 2 seed. They made a run to the sectional final as a 10 seed last year. This year they have beaten Martin Luther. They have beaten Oakfield. They have beaten Sheboygan Lutheran. They have beaten St. Mary Catholic. So
yeah, but I think the template for being a team like Cedar Grove, Belgium, to beat a team like Milwaukee Juneau or a Dominican or a St. Cat's or whatever private school might be in that Division IV sectional, because it has been a private school. And Juneau's not a private school, but they are I think they're a charter school, or at least an MPS team, right? An urban school. You have to have really challenged yourself and played bigger opponents in that kind of environment. And Oakfield is not going to prepare you to play Milwaukee Juneau. As much as that's a solid win, like that's not the same. So
I agree.
I'm not saying it can't happen, but that's not the profile for the kind of team that would beat a kind of team like Milwaukee Juneau.
Sure.
All right, let's move on to Division 5 as we are approaching 2.5 hours on today's podcast already. Division 5, we go from talking about Milwaukee and Kenosha and everything else to Turtle Lake and Webster and Drummond, and Lakeland Conference schools and Northern Lights Conference schools. In the top part of that bracket anyway, Division 5, Sectional 1. The 1 seed is Turtle Lake, who made it to state last year and has some good pieces coming back from that group. And then the bottom part of that bracket, we get into more of the Marywood, I think maybe some Clover Belt schools in there, in the bottom part of the group. And Loyal, the top seed, Columbus Catholic, a strong option down there. Again, some of the other Marywood schools. So shifting gears considerably to Sectional 1 of D5, but thoughts on that one?
Turtle Lake is a difference maker. We saw it last year on their run. Brandon Wagner is 6'8", football commit, and he can light it up from deep when he wants to go. I can't remember how many threes he had in that state game, but he had a handful. He had 20-plus points. So they got hot, but really I think it comes down to 2 or 3 teams in the bottom, in Loyal, Columbus Catholic, and even Apprentice team as a 3 seed I like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams in here that I'm not privy to, especially when we get further north and away from me. But it seems like the bottom half is a little bit stronger. And what were you going to ask, Travis?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we start getting down to some of these teams, and we start talking about the drop-down effect.
Right.
Teams that have played. I
think that plays a huge role in the Division 4 and Division 5. I really do. I think that plays a huge role.
So we look at like Turtle Lake's schedule, for instance, and they've actually played a decent amount of D4 teams. But let's go to Drummond. Some of the teams that come out of the Northern Lights Conference. Drummond played 22 games out of their 24 against Division 5 teams. Washburn played 18 games against Division 5 teams. And then you look at some of those Marywood, Clover Belt, especially type teams, Loyal, Columbus Catholic. I mean, they were playing double-digit games against Division IV teams throughout the year in good conferences. So that's where, again, that drop down effect starts to come into play, and why it was honestly a little surprising to see Turtle Lake come out of that group last year, I think, because that's not what we have seen traditionally. We've seen a lot of that drop down Clover Belt, Merriwood type representation coming out of that grouping, but Turtle Lake found a way to get it done. So,
I really like Prentice and Rib Lake, 3 seed and 5 seed in out of the Merriwood, but I do think that this sectional comes down to Loyola Columbus Catholic round 3 in the sectional semi. Both teams actually just lost their Clover Belt crossovers to Regis and Fall Creek, but they've played 2 extremely close games. Loyola won the first one by 2. Columbus Catholic won the second one by 1. Very guard-oriented squads. A lot of that Columbus Catholic team, or not a lot of it, but a couple of their top players, Matt Knitschke and Ben Wieland, they played on that state championship team 2 years ago. Were they major contributors? Mac played quite a bit, right? But they got to figure out what it was and what it took to make a state tournament run. And obviously, Coach Joe Knitschke knows he'd done it.
All right, well, let's move on to sectional 2, which carries a lot of the similar type of questions. And I think one of the big questions, especially in Division 5, is how much stock can you put in the undefeated 24-0 record for Tigerton, a team that is out of the CWC North, not as strong as some of the other divisions of the CWC, certainly not Clover Belt, Merriwood type schedule and competition, but they're 24-0, but their schedule strength is way down there. Of the 500 and some teams, whatever, in the Bound database, they're 465 in strength of schedule. Their best win, according to our metrics, is actually against the Northeast Wisconsin Christian Homeschool Athletic Association, which is a very good team, by the way. But
sure, yeah,
they are. Otherwise you're looking at their best win against Amherst, a team that was under 500, I believe, on the season, in another division of the CWC. So how much stock do we put into what Tigerton has done? And, are they susceptible to a Newman Catholic, potentially a Pacelli in their own sectional, or even obviously when you expand and look at the full sectional, a team like Reedsville or even Elkhart Lake Glen Beulah that maybe have played a little bit stronger schedules?
Well, I mean, one thing you can look at, if you do, I know like the schedule, right, isn't necessarily there, but I mean, looking at the scores, they took care of business. I mean, there were really no hiccups when it came to that. So I guess there is something to be said there, but
they have a difference maker. They have a junior that's 6'7". He's a bigger kid. He can post up. He's a double-double every night. I watched a little bit of their film actually this past week just to get a better understanding because I hadn't seen much of them really at all. And they got better pieces around James Brady. They're big than you would think, and Sam Anhauser. I think that's how you say his name. A couple other guards that can light it up.
Brady's listed at 6'10", by the way.
Oh, so 6'10". Again, difference maker, right? And so he's a big kid, but
that's something right there too, though, is that at the Division 5 level, there aren't many 6'10" kids walking around. You got a kid who's averaging 25 and 12.
We have seen over the past couple years in D4 and D5 a team that might not be as talented with a big man that carries them to state. Alman Bancroft, Aiden Phillips did last year. Turtle Lake, a Brandon Wagner took him on a good run. Going back to even D4 with Marathon. Yes, Marathon is a really good program. Grant Warren was really, really good. So can they make a run? Yes. Do I think – I look at that Reedsville team, though, and I've watched them play now a couple times, and I went back and watched the game. It was last week they played, and one of their guys was like 10 of 16 from 3. Ben Prochnow had 18 assists. I went back and just watched all of their offensive possessions. He assisted on 15 of their first 16 baskets. Granted, Chilton was playing a 2-3, so it was a little bit easier to find your passing lanes And when guys hit shots, obviously your assist numbers go up. But I've watched them play now 3 times, and Prochnow can absolutely take over a game with the ball in his hand.
I mean, so you think there's anybody that can contend with Reidsville in their sectional there? Like truly,
the second round match with Lords is intriguing, just because Lords, I mean, they have some football players on that team. They have some strength. They have some size. They've already beat an Elkhart team pretty handily, I believe. Let me double check that so I'm not speaking out of turn. They beat them once by 38, but then the second time I guess was closer. It was 14. So Elkhart, that third time against a conference opponent, but yeah, I really do like Reidsville.
I mean, I just look at a lot of teams sitting like hovering around that 500 mark, and sure, can they compete with teams, but I'm not sure that they can necessarily beat a team like Reidsville, like you said.
Before we hop out, one team just to mention is that 2 seed in the top, Wabeno Leona. They have 3,000 point scorers on the squad. They're guard oriented. They play the ball. They share the ball. So I mean, they're no one to just overlook.
I don't think Anthony Pieper is walking through that door for Wasaki. So I don't know that there's somebody there that's gonna push him. But again, talking schedules. If Tigerton makes it to sectional play, it will be the first time in more than a month that they would have played a game away from home.
Holy cow.
So
interesting scheduling there.
Yeah.
All right. We are almost done, halfway through Division 5 as we look at Sectional 3, which starts to move into the western part of the state. Our defending state champions are out of that sectional, Cochrane Fountain City. Their record not quite as spectacular as last year, but some really good players returning, players that were part of that state championship football team as well. And then you've also got some Scenic Bluffs teams in there, Royal and Hillsboro. Assumption is a sleeper team with a record that's maybe not as sparkling, but going to be competitive. Bottom part of Sectional 3, we now start to get into a lot of the southwestern area of the state, the Six Rivers, the Ridge and Valley, and I think one that a lot of people are really interested in is a potential round 3 between Kickapoo and North Crawford. But Southwestern is a team that's right there that I have picked to get to state, I think, 5 years in a row.
Clint would like you to stop doing that.
And Coach Nemitz would like me to stop picking them because they seem to get to sectionals over and over and not get through. So I'm not going to pick them this year, even though I probably would. But really interesting, especially in the bottom part of that bracket, guys.
Yeah, this is similar to last year where, Royal and Hillsboro were also in the bottom, and that was a sectional that was just absolutely loaded. Highland, Potosi, and River Ridge were all really good. North Crawford was really good. Kickapoo won like 16 games and was a 9 seed last year in the bottom. 7 seed. Okay. But that was a loaded half sectional. Again, it's a little bit similar this year with Royal and Hillsboro at the top, Cochrane Fountain City at the top, defending champs. I look at that bottom and I just see matchup after matchup that I enjoy, whether it's in the first round, second round, third round. Seneca and Ithaca both have beat Crawford this year. Granted, Crawford's getting healthier. They got their senior leader and kind of tone setter and Landon Blaha back, so that is a huge difference maker for them just in attitude-wise and leadership. You got a 5 seed in River Ridge that's had Brandon Davis that I feel like has been at River Ridge for 12 years, but he's a senior. He's a really good point guard. 4 seed Belmont, they've been in our top 10 consistently this year. They're young, sophomore-led group, but they're really solid. And Trav, you talked about it, Southwestern. They just beat Darlington this past week or 2 weeks ago. So,
unfortunately, the Ridge and Valley, which is the top 2, Kickapoo and North Crawford, have traditionally not fared well against the Six Rivers. The Six Rivers has been a very good conference for a long time, and it's been a struggle for that Ridge and Valley over the last 10 years or so against that group, or even against the Scenic Bluffs when they would match up. And it was Bangor that was really good for a long time, and then Royal has had a good run under Coach Uppenoff for a while. So they got to prove it. I mean, Kickapoo and North Crawford, they got to earn it on the court, obviously, that they are in that category where they can, and maybe it's, for these kids, it's probably not a mental block because they don't know, remember, maybe weren't even part of some of those along the way, but it hasn't gone well for the Ridge and Valley. So that's why I'm a little hesitant on Kickapoo and North Crawford compared to some of these other teams in the Six Rivers or even in the Scenic Bluffs or in the case of Southwestern in the SWAL.
It seems like a team like Royal has tested themselves a little bit this year, going up divisions too and playing like a team like Bangor, and it looks like they played Mauston, and they've had some really close games with, other Division 5 teams alike as well. So
they've also played Crawford and Kickapoo and
yep.
lost both.
Yeah, I guess it's an interesting dynamic to see some of that stuff, I guess, though.
It is. I wouldn't sleep on that Assumption team in the top 4 or in the top half 4 seed. They got Logan Nystrom and JT Schleifer that can really shoot the ball and get going, and I think that when you look at it, they can probably push just about any team in that upper half, especially with playing, the schedule that they do. I
would still say Cochran Fountain City you have to have in the mix as well.
Yes.
For a lot of reasons, but they've had a little bit of a rough stretch here at the end of the year, losing to some teams that you probably wouldn't have expected them to necessarily. Losing to Melrose, Mindoro, Alma Center, Lincoln, and Whitehall all in the last 3 weeks. Not the kind of finish they probably wanted on the season, but still I think have to be in the mix. Again, a lot of kids from last year with experience, kids from the football team with experience, kids from the football team with strength. I still think they are a threat in that group.
Selfishly, I think, obviously being from the region and living in Kickapoo territory, my wife teaches in the district. I think all 8 of the regional quarterfinal potential games would be good in that bottom half. All 8 of them. Or it'd be all 4 of them. Sorry, all 4 of them.
Yeah, what would, let's see, Kickapoo would be looking at potentially Potosi-Cassville, which that is not going to be an easy game either in the second round.
Potosi-Cassville's a
16-game winner out of the Six Rivers Conference. That and Coach Uppenoff has been there forever. I talked to him last week. Actually, I think it was the day after they lost to Belmont. And I was also asking him, this is the first year, interestingly, of their basketball co-op, which has been a little surprising given the history at Cassville and the history at Potosi as well.
Yeah.
But I think he said they're now co-op for all sports. I asked him how it was going, with a new setup. But since those kids are already together in football and in most other sports, he said they have embraced it and had no issues. He had to, kind of figure out some logistical stuff and some administrative stuff with practices and transportation and that kind of thing. But otherwise, he said it's gone pretty well. But that is a very tough potential game there. And then a regional final against Southwestern potentially.
Don't forego DeSoto. They won 18 games and Southwestern and host them.
Yeah, I mean for Kickapoo to get through though,
yeah,
you'd be going 16-win Potosi-Cassville in a regional semifinal, Southwestern in a regional final, potentially North Crawford in a sectional semifinal, and you're not even to state yet. So that is a really grueling run that they would have to go on.
Can we speak about the color scheme of Potosi-Cassville?
The maroon and green.
That is not a good look. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to take it away from basketball here, but that is not a good look.
Hey, the Castle Comets are green. The Potosi Chieftains they're that maroon.
That is something.
All right. Well, let's move on to the last sectional and the last division of the last preview of our boys basketball state tournament look here. A bunch of Six Rivers teams, Trailways teams in sectional 4A. Bottom part of that bracket, we start moving to the eastern part of the state, and we get some teams from the Milwaukee area, some teams in the Big East. Throw some Trailways teams in there. Maybe not the level of storylines that we get, or even maybe strength of teams, as we were just talking about sectional 3, but certainly some interesting opportunities for teams in that sectional 4, which is pretty wide open.
I think in the bottom you're looking simply at a Oakfield Sheboygan Lutheran sectional semi. A lot of those teams are Lake City teams, Trailway teams, independent teams. I think that Oakfield Sheboygan Lutheran game is very, very intriguing and a very, very good matchup. Oakfield's deep, talented. They got a big kid in the middle in Bo Bijel that can, be a difference maker. Sheboygan Lutheran, they've been there, done that. On top of that, Coach Verhagen is getting one of his senior guys back that was a big, big contributor the last few years in Zach Leonard. He's played the last 3 games. That is a huge boost to that team. Huge. So I really, really am looking forward to that in the bottom half.
I was trying to remember. I think I watched Oakfield in a sectional game last year at Portage. And then off topic, I just went to the WIAA bracket from last year to try to see, and the entire sectional 4B is blank, and only the first round games are in the top part of sectional 4. So I'll have to go back to the old WIS Sports archive to look it up. But I think it was Oakfield and Abundant.
They lost to Abundant Life.
Yeah, in at Portage, I was at that game.
Yeah. On the top half, you have an Abundant Life team that's been to state the past 2 years. They have lost the Kuhn twins and a couple other seniors from that 2005 class, but I look at a 2-seed Barneveld that has played really, really well. And outside of, Abundant Life, though we haven't had those Six Rivers Trailways matchups near as much in years past, I feel like they've been split in their sectionals.
Yeah, I mean, the WIA got a request from the coaches and the Coaches Association 3-4 years ago to do more variation of how they split teams, and that has caused some of those traditional type matchups to maybe rotate a little bit more. That's to the chagrin of some people, if that kind of changing of sectional drawing circles put you in a stronger group. Whatever, but there has been a concerted effort to change things up a little bit more than maybe what they used to, and that's part of the reason that we aren't seeing Trailways Six Rivers matchups as much. The Six Rivers used to go east into sectional 4 frequently, and now it's a little more staying west with Ridge and Valley, Scenic Bluffs type schools.
Yeah, I do like that Barneveld team though in the top half. They've lost 2 games since January 12th. Both were single point deficits to Division III teams. So, but I also think that Oakfield Sheboygan Lutheran is the winner out of that one is probably going to be the representative at the Kohl Center.
Shout out to Coach Gibbons at CWC, having a nice year. Have lost all 4 matchups to Oakfield and Horicon, but all within that 10 to 12 point range. Are they a team that could give Oakfield a run for their money if they were to match up?
In that regional, probably yes. I think they would be the best bet too. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask about Oakfield potentially having to take on either Sheboygan Christian or Catholic Central in that first game for Oakfield. Both those teams are looked at more favorably in the Bound Power Index than they were in the WI seeding. Both play pretty stiff competition in their conferences. Well prepared, play larger teams, don't play a ton of D5 teams. In fact, Catholic Central only played 4 games against D5 teams all year. The majority of their schedule is against D3. And, are those teams that could challenge Oakfield in that early game?
Yeah, potentially. So you're looking at a couple, maybe tough games for Oakfield to open things up here.
I would say maybe, but also I'm not sure.
I can tell you that
I like Oakfield's group. They made it to that sectional final last year and pretty much returned everybody outside of Mitch Moser. So
I can tell you that Sheboygan Lutheran Hughesford game is not going to be pretty. Living right down the road from Hughesford, they are struggling not just on the basketball floor, but as a school district right now, they're trying to fight. They're fighting to try to stay open still. So, their basketball team has really struggled this year, and obviously Sheboygan Lutheran is very talented. So,
and obviously that's a far cry from just a few years ago. They won a state title in that COVID shortened, adjusted 2021 season up in La Crosse. That was pretty exciting at the end. So,
All right, we are officially at 2 hours and 40 minutes. Trav, your trivia is going to have to wait till next week.
I'm throwing it out there.
Okay, we're doing Trav's trivia.
I got 2 this week, one dealing with boys and one with girls. The first Trav's trivia question this week, without looking, can you name the 20 teams that qualified for state and boys basketball last year? Because I couldn't. I know that.
Turtle Lake, Cochrane.
Don't
Sheboygan.
say it.
Oh.
It's not for
you got 2.
Mostly. My second Trav's trivia question, what year in school was the last Madison Public School girls basketball team to advance to the state tournament? We talked about Madison Memorial being a 7 seed, still alive, still playing well. Led me to that question.
That does it. That was a long episode, but I think that we needed to talk about everything we did. I mean, we're into the thick of it. We're into the postseason. If you have stuck around and are here at 2 hours and 41 minutes, holy cow! Kudos to you. I think this is an episode that I'm going to put timestamps out with, though. Probably a good idea, so teams can go or people can go in and see the divisional reviews, the girls' review.
Yeah, because not everybody's interested in every single division, so that would probably be the best bet to do it, so people can see where they want to.
Should have done that with the girls, but I got to figure out how to do that. It's a little earlier than what we're normally at for. No, it's not. But I'll look at doing that while laying in bed. Guys, appreciate you hopping on. Trav, good seeing you this weekend. Chris, good luck this week.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited. Playoff weeks is always fun.
No regrets on that floor, fellas. No regrets to all the girls and boys that are playing basketball this week.
Colt, let's get that regional championship for the first time in 42 years.
Doing it
as the good luck.
13 seed out of the 13 seed half sectional, that'd be something.
Go get it.
Yeah. Sign us off.
To the baseline we go.